Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noiser, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and I entitled this episode, Domestic Degeneracy, Ameriquarantine, and Following the Money. Because it's as the name implies, we're going to be doing all those things, breaking down what's going on with the COVID-19, talking about how we're literally being turned into degenerates, like it's some cool thing, yeah, like losing our minds is the latest thing, we get into that. We also break down what's going on with the coronavirus chaos, as well as the financial backers behind such, and what that means. We break down the socio-economic and the socio-political ramifications of it and more. But before we do so, before we get into this fantastic episode, a few quick updates. If you guys didn't listen to the episode I did with Lori Alexander of the Global Watchman News this Sunday, you're slacking. We compared COVID-19 to 9/11 and more. We also did a mini-cast this Tuesday breaking down again the socioeconomic and political implications of the coronavirus. Also, we have links to holistic medicinal protocols, posts to combat the coronavirus, and more below. We did an entire mini-cast to help boost your immune system as well. We're trying to give you guys as much information to tackle this beast, and if you don't want it, that's up to you. If you guys want to support this operation, support us, and do more at the same time, think about becoming a Patreon exclusive member. All kinds of different tiers to help support this operation. And with that being said, let's start the show. Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noise Era, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and this is show number 1008, season 10, episode 8. We're coronavirus free. We don't know for how long. New Mexico has already had 3 presumptive cases this week. Don't worry, we'll get into the coronavirus news and everything else, the global lockdown, and all that other craziness that you see happening outside your window. We'll get into that, don't you worry. But before doing so, the same way I told you guys just the other week that I'm evil, that's what the E in EJ stands for, right? Evil J. I also should feel like I should let you guys know I'm not very smart and I'm not very bright. You see me try to do math on the show sometimes. I stutter. Sometimes I say things that mean something else. I try to sound smart. I'm not that smart, I'm about as bright as a dim bulb. I am as bright as a dimly lit room. That's what I was telling you guys about. That's why I like to hang out up underneath the, sketchy bridges. Yeah, I find comfort in the. I find comfort underneath the shadiest parts of bridges, like trolls. Yeah, I'm not very bright. I'm not. But what I am is I'm responding to a threat. You get me? I'm not very bright myself, but we're going up against people who have IQs that are clearly over 180, clearing that easy, pushing 200. We're going up against technocrats, Satanists, because we have some of that to get into this episode, Luciferians, atheists. We have even devout people who are actually Christian but interpret the text a different way. We are going up against very, very smart people. And so, because of this, I myself am responding to that. I'm sure there's some kind of psychological construct or sociological ideology that takes place to where, because somebody comes into contact with like advanced stuff, they themselves, their overall intelligence increases. I think that's kind of what that's what I'm trying to explain here. I myself am not very smart. But because of what we're dealing with, at the rapid nature in which we're dealing with it, and the evolving nature thereof, I'm having to respond. This is why you've heard me talk about bringing your best forward, and how the future requires the best of us. How we're living right now, in a time, I don't want to say of like a population control or anything like that, but survival of the fittest. We're living in the future. It's 2020. If you think we can just sit here and coast through our lives in such a chaotic time, you've got another thing coming to you. So when I start this episode off by telling you guys I'm not that bright, but I'm responding to the all-encompassing threat that we see taking place. And I had this thought too, just the other day, about AI, because that's a whole nother thing. This is why I push the pro-human Renaissance-based future, because AI itself is a movement, something that's taking over. Automation, conformity, things of this nature. The only way that I can combat AI is with the pro-human Renaissance-based movement. Creativity, authenticity, human divinity, and so much more. You see, yeah, I'm not that bright, but I'm trying to respond to what we are confronted with, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why you see the shows intensifying. That's why you see me trying to mature my delivery method. That's why you try to see me. We're going to eventually start having guests on to, again, back up some of these claims, have their own perspectives, and so much more. This is why you guys see us doing everything we're doing, because it's not just me that's seeing this thing go on. It's not just EJ out here observing the world. There are others. And so as we build the factions of freedom, the freedom faction, as we increase our overall intelligence and awareness, not only of the problems, but also of our solutions as well, we're going to get smarter. We're going to grow, because stagnation is the cousin of death. It is the stagnation is the cost of Congress. You know, if you stop moving forward, you're eventually going to congress. You're going to regress. You're going to be stagnant. That's what we're wanting these numbers with the coronavirus to do, is we want them to stagnate, but instead they're increasing. We want it to decrease, but instead they're increasing. So I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say in this particular intro. Is I myself am not very bright, man. I might be, that might be just me, stroking my own ego, but I'm trying to let you guys know that when you step into this arena, when you really start looking at, okay, what can I do? Who are the players? Who are the players? What are the agendas? Who stands to gain? All these different things. When you really start getting your mind thinking in a completely different way, you're going to seem like you're smarter, but it's because you're really reacting to a threat. I remember I'll say this and I'll start getting into the episode. I remember talking about this last year, about how, it's because it's humans have to experience adversity. Like, we're going to be getting into an article here soon about how millennials are developing early onset Alzheimer's and dementia because we're doing too many drugs. We don't care about life. It's the nihilism, the apathy. We're going to get into that. But I remember talking about this last year, how in response to all this craziness, you begin to develop muscles, not just mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, and so much more, but you just begin to develop a completely different sense. And because people have just been so turned off, stagnant, desensitized, disenfranchised, whatever you want to call it, dehumanized, it's because people have been living in this state for so long, they don't know how to read the signs of the times. They don't know how to read the writing on the wall. They don't know how to prepare. I remember talking about this earlier with you guys this week, about how a lot of people are not mentally equipped with the faculties required to break this down, analyze it, forecast, and project into the future to begin to start thinking of things that they need to do now. This is why I said 45 days. This is why, as you guys have seen us cover these topics, it's intensified. And so just to put a little bow on this, we didn't just end up here. We didn't just happenstance end up here, a stork didn't just drop the Freedom Faction operation. This mindset has been forged through several years, and I say several because it's at least 12, several on the air, 4 where we're doing it consistently. It's come from several years of being hard nose to the grindstone, getting work done, looking at this, doing this analysis, trying to put this stuff together. I'm not up here to lie to you guys. I'm not up here to deceive you. I'm not up here to manipulate you. I'm out here to do what you guys have chartered me to do, and that's it. That's it. So when I tell you I'm not that smart, I'm just doing what is required of me. This is my part. And when I talk about things that I'm doing in my own personal life, that's just a suggestion, my friends. I would hope that even the suggestions we have can benefit you, because that's all we're here to do, is to help you. And with that being said, let's start the show. So, as I said before, we will be getting into the coronavirus news in the second segment. That's right. We actually did a lot of work this weekend. If you guys didn't listen to the Comparing COVID-19 to 9/11 with Lori Alexander of the Global Watchman News, you're missing out. I also tried to give a quick summarized version this week, but if you really didn't listen to that, you're missing out on the gold of hearing us break this down in a lot of different ways, looking at several agendas, looking at the spiritual implications, financial implications, and so much more. Really, really make sure you guys check that out. We were really putting together, and I have to say this because I said this at the start of the year too, and I think it's what I was trying to say in response to the adversity, not being very smart, and just growing in response to the chaos. We're putting out some of our best work right now. Real talk. We're putting out some of our best work, some of our most concise, on point rhetoric, and I really am proud of it. And I think that's why I know that we're improving, because it's not just chatter. You see, these are actually things that people can use in their lives. We're putting together presentations filled with studies, infographics, and more. So I'm very proud of the content that we're putting out. And I think it's just crazy, because this is what happens when not only whenever you're in a war, or whenever you're in a fight, or whenever you're in a moment of conflict, but you're digging deep. And I feel like that's where some people are. We're providing our best because we understand the times that we're in, and that's what's required of us. So yeah, like I said, let's start getting into the news. I'll stop ranting, and we'll start breaking down all of this chaos. In this segment, domestic degeneracy, what do you think we're going to talk about? I'll just give you a quick look. We're going to talk about millennials developing early onset Alzheimer's, the paradox flu, Satanists protesting Catholics in Washington, as well as Corey Feldman accusing Charlie Sheen of raping Corey Haim when he was a child. Yeah, that's right, domestic degeneracy. This stuff that's going on in America as we're seeing other things take place. But let's start this off. We put this up March 9th. It's from Sign of the Times. It says the number of millennials with early onset Alzheimer's disease is surging, the report finds. Just last week, we reported how Blue Cross Blue Shield reported on that as well. They noted it. We'll get into that. It's mentioned in this article. But before going into this, I just want to mention, I think people already understand this. That's why I wanted to start this episode off telling you I'm not that bright. I've just decided to commit myself to this type of work that refines me and transforms me to be a better individual, not only for myself, but for those around me, my immediate community and the global community. You got to understand, guys, people don't think like me. People don't think like me at all. They don't. People are very sick. And we spend a lot of time breaking down the psychological and the sociological implications of that. And obviously delving into the spiritual aspects of it. But people's minds are atrophying. They are degenerating. We're dying inside, from the Molly to the Coke to the Percocets to the DMT to the mushrooms to the ayahuasca to the extreme diets to the screen time. To so many factors lead to this. And that's why I'm telling you, vote with your dollars, vote with your lifestyle. Begin to change things, not only your diet, but again, your lifestyle. Begin to change things so you can fix those patterns. Modern society is killing us. But let me get into this article. It said the number of Americans being diagnosed with early onset dementia and Alzheimer's disease at younger ages is surging, according to a new report from the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. Dementia and Alzheimer's disease traditionally have been considered a concern for older generations, but recent spikes in early onset of these conditions in Americans as young as 30 suggest a different story. Between 2013 and 2017, early onset dementia and Alzheimer's diagnoses increased 83% among commercially insured Americans aged 30 to 44, according to a report released by the healthcare insurer. That age group includes the oldest millennials. Overall, early onset diagnoses increased by 200% among commercially insured Americans between ages 30 to 64. That includes a 50% jump among those aged 45 to 54, and by 40% for those aged 55 to 64. The average patient was diagnosed at 49. Quote, the results of this report are concerning, especially the increase in early onset dementia and Alzheimer's among younger people. Dr. Richard Snyder, Chief Medical Officer for Independence Blue Cross, said in a statement. Quote, while the underlying cause is not clear, advances in technology are certainly allowing for earlier and more definitive diagnoses. Regardless,
Those who develop dementia or Alzheimer's at an early age will likely require caregiving, either from family members or healthcare providers. The time, cost, and impact on families can be significant and can require additional support at the disease progress. Diagnosis rates were higher in the East, South, and parts of the Midwest. It says that women also made up 58% of the diagnoses. Alzheimer's, the most common type of dementia, begins with mild memory loss, eventually progressing to the point where victims can no longer hold a conversation or respond to their environments. Symptoms generally occur after age 60. Early this year, researchers said a vaccine that both prevents and treats Alzheimer's could be ready for humans in trials within 18 months. So think about that. They're saying that Alzheimer's begins when people have mild memory loss, their inability to hold conversations or recognize their environment. What happens when you're walking down the street and you got your phone? How many times do we talk about people just disassociating from reality because of funny cat video or a cute meme? And I'm being facetious for a reason. But really think about this. Where is humanity going with modern society just, scrolling down, playing that social media roulette, hoping that they can get new information? And I'm guilty of it too. But this is again why I try to tell you we have to use their tools of enslavement as tools of empowerment. Think about all the things that you've accomplished while being on social media. Think about all the things you've done in that hybrid existence we now have, where you have a digital life as well as a physical life. Are you really cognizant of what you're doing, of what you're participating in, of what you're contributing to? You see, the number of millennials with early onset Alzheimer's disease is surging. Let's just read some of these comments. Probably most likely magnesium and B vitamin deficiencies over the years of abusing dopamine and constantly on phones while eating crap food. Thank God for lion's mane to help reverse and prevent this crap. That was one of the comments said by Charles S. Shine with Chanda says, you think when you inject the population with aluminum and spray us overhead with aluminum, what did they think was going to happen? That was said by Shine with Chanda. And the list goes on. The list goes on. I Am Conjure Queen says how to remedy this problem with reading, puzzles, drinking herbs like ginkgo root, walnut, ginseng, we have some of that, and a few others. Keep your brain active while solving problems. This reverses the tissue and also prevents it. I speak on natural remedies and solutions on my channel when YouTube doesn't take it down. Big Pharma doesn't like that type of stuff. Shout out to you, Conjure Queen. You guys go check her out. And I think that's crazy too, because just last week we ended the episode talking about neuroplasticity, why it's important for people to start thinking productive thoughts, creating healthy habits, better behaviors, and so much more. Neuroplasticity, your thoughts create the structure of your brain. But if you're over here just trying to, again, disassociate from reality, deny what's happening, remain ignorant, well, what the frick you think's going to happen after a while? What do you think is truly going to happen when your entire life and existence has been based in ignorance and denial? You truly do not know. And I remember freaking out last year, coming to this realization as well, that I can't really be mad at people because they don't know what's going on. They don't know that they don't know. And I can't be mad at them because they don't want to know. And so when we're having this conversation, basically, we need to really understand that we're basically asking the question of who are we working with? We're working with people who actually want to know, people who want to start making these changes in their life. That's when you have to ask the question of, are we going out there trying to wake people up? Is it worth it? That's a whole different discussion for a different day, but I think you guys get the point of talking about early onset Alzheimer and dementia afflicting our generation. Now, if that's just the mental decay, the mental degeneracy that we're going through, again, think about the spiritual atrophy that we're experiencing. Very, very dangerous. But for the sake of time, we can't get into this. But what we can get into is this right here, the flu paradox. We're having discussions about the flu versus the coronavirus because people are saying, treat this like the flu. We're going to speak on that, the whole little schism and everything with that here throughout this show. I just want to tickle people's brains while we think about it. Domestic degeneracy. Well, nobody's really talking about why in God's name we're all this sick in the first place. They just want to run us around and start injecting people with shots. Basically, for the past 6 weeks or so, we've been promoting alternative and holistic medicinal protocols that people can take, different ways that they can build their immune system, and more. But right here asks the right question. This comes from Jeffrey Gratter over there at Now the End Begins. They put this up March 9th. It says the flu has killed 20,000 people, 20,000 Americans this season alone, and no one is panicking. So why is this lonely coronavirus causing the stock market to crash? It says nothing about the coronavirus remotely approaches any of the metrics for something we should all be terrified of. Yet the stock market is crashing, oil prices are dropping, and panicked customers picking the grocery store shelves bare are beginning to hoard supplies. It's a real virus, but it's also a false flag. The headlines on Drudge Report this morning, a gathering of news headlines from around the world, are all screaming a single united message. That message is that the coronavirus is a plague of biblical proportions and has already begun to destroy indiscriminately and on a global level. The only thing is, it's not only doing anything remotely close to that. So why is everyone so terrified? Then we have another quote here from the Bible. It comes from Luke chapter 21, verse 26. It says, quotes, men's hearts failing them for fear and looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. If you want something to be afraid of, here's something to keep you up at night. During the current cold season here in America that is still ongoing, the flu has killed over 20,000 people, with 136 children numbered among the fallen. Think about that. 20,000 Americans dead from the flu, yet no one is calling for any flu sufferers to be quarantined. No emergency measures or of any being taken. They want you to be afraid of the coronavirus. But why? Let's think about that. It says the CDC said that so far this season, 34 million people have gotten the flu and about 20,000 have died. Of those who died as of February 29th, 136 were children. The CDC said it in its weekly flu report. The CDC said that the hospitalization rates among younger children were the highest on record, surpassing rates reported during the 2009 pandemic. Liberals and families said that a good crisis should never go to waste, and that's exactly what we're experiencing right now. And we certainly can presume that that includes a manufactured crisis as well as an organic one. This is not a new phenomenon. All the way back to the end of the 19th century, the rich and the powerful were creating them left and right. Back then, it was called yellow journalism, the fake news of that day. So as Jeffrey Gratter puts it right there, people have to understand this is both a false flag and a real concern. What I've really been trying to illustrate to people that, and I talked more about this when I said comparing COVID-19 to 9/11, the first initial impact is Tower 1, the outbreak in China. That's when we're asking, is it race specific? Is it age specific? And as we're sitting here marveling over what's happening in awe, the bad kind, Tower 2 hits, boom. We begin to see this disease spread. We're like, oh my God, I can't even believe that a virus would happen in the first place. How could that happen? And a virus spreading? Our minds can't comprehend it. We're completely unaware that Tower 7, the socioeconomic and the socio-political implications, has already been hit. They're politicizing this event. We need a bill. Shut down. Lock down everything. Don't you worry. We'll get into the coronavirus and stuff like that and more. But keep this in mind. The flu did not close all these trade shows. We'll talk more about that in the second segment because people really should keep that type of stuff in mind. We'll get back to the coronavirus, you know, the similarities with the flu and stuff like that and more. Don't you worry. But why is this in the domestic degeneracy part of the show? Well, good Lord, why are we all getting sick? Why are we all living in such a toxic environment? Why do we all have immunocompromised systems? Why is the concept of vitamin C, holistic practitioners, why is that so nasty? You see, they want us to be scumbags. I mean, just before coming on to the air, I remember reading an article about how some of the treatment procedures in California are really, really terrifying because they're just letting people kind of come and go. And so that makes me think about, you know, the transmission rate, the homeless rate, you know, the feces, all the stuff that's going on over there. And so I'm just saying, what is going on? Why have we gotten to this point? Why why do we try to tout this healthcare system as if it is like the pinnacle of human excellence, and we can't even get anything done? I'll save my criticisms for later. But just to get back into the point, back into domestic degeneracy, as we're still talking about the coronavirus in some sense, right now you have worshipers from the Satanic Temple in Washington State holding a demonic ritual ceremony on the Capitol steps during the 2020 legislative session as Catholics protest. You have Satanists and Catholics protesting one another amid a coronavirus outbreak out there in Washington State. So just think about this, and this is an angle that I've kind of wanted to cover, that I've kind of wanted to speak on, that I wanted to bring up, but I think people kind of inherently get it. Heaven forbid Antifa or any of these type of people get their hands on a modified strain of the coronavirus. Heaven forbid anybody from this group contract coronavirus and then become weaponized themselves. You get what I'm saying? Heaven forbid we actually reach that point. And that's what people need to think about. We don't really think about the different vector points, the mentality, and the mental state of a lot of people. When I tell you that we're living in a time of accelerationists, extremists, obviously Satanists, people that really could care less about themselves and more, this is the time frame. Some people even commented, well, of course they would want to hold a protest / ritual. They want to harvest the fear. Of course they would like to do these types of things. Here, let me get into this article. It comes from Now the End Begins. We just put this up March 11th. It's by Jeffrey Grider. It says, Satanists from the Satanic Temple of Washington State drew a crowd of protesting Roman Catholics Friday as they hoisted their pentagram and conducted a satanic ritual on the state capitol Friday, March 6th. According to their site, quote, the Department of Enterprise Services granted the Satanic Temple of Washington a permit to perform an invocation during the current legislative session from noon to 1 p.m., March 6th, on the north steps of the legislative building. The event took place as scheduled, with the Roman Catholic protesters pleading for the Virgin Mary to, quote, do something as the Satanists from the Satanic Temple cast their spells. What a scene, man. Like a chick track come to life. Quote, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye not be of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Revelation chapter 18, verses 4-5. Isn't it interesting to see how the book of Revelation tells us that not only will God throw Satan and his followers into the lake of fire, but also shows us the utter destruction of the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Corporation as well. I think it's mind-blowing that God puts Satanism and Roman Catholicism on pretty much the same level. Think about that a while. The Satanic Temple is the obvious choice for the burning fires of hell. God will put all false religion there, including the Roman Catholic Church as well. God is no respecter of persons, and one false religion is just as bad as the other. Congregants from the Seattle-based Satanic Temple of Washington State drew a crowd of prayerful onlookers Friday as they hoisted their pentagram and conducted a satanic ritual at the Capitol Friday, March 6th. And this next part comes from, what was this? Bainbridge Island Review. Now, before I get into that, I just have to keep this in mind, let you guys know that basically what we're kind of casually talking about not only is the gradual rise of Satanism. I mean, you can go watch it over there on Hulu, right? They have their documentary, Hail Satan, ? Not only is this documenting the rise of Satanism, but again, just the spiritual and moral decay. You could even say the intellectual decay, because, I mean, there's this whole thing with the coronavirus going out, and these guys are thinking it's a great idea. But this is just emblematic of the times that we're in. Let me read this real quick. It says, and again, this part comes from the Bainbridge Island Review. It says, Catholic groups and followers caught wind of Satanist celebrants and showed up to sing and pray in the name of Jesus. Some younger Catholics held a sign that read, Satan has no rights. Satanic Temple affiliates such as Justin Harvey, John Ashby, said their event was about promoting religious plurality. He said he believes satanic beliefs have been misunderstood and viewed as, quote, grossly perverse, and that their primary values are empathy, reason, boldly autonomy, and justice. Yeah. Satan offers liberation. Or so they said. Or at least that's what we're told, right? The Satan, Lucifer, he's here to bring the light to free us, right? Free us from our bondage. This is America 2020. This is America 2020. So to begin to close out this segment with more domestic degeneracy, check this out. Corey Feldman has accused Charlie Sheen of raping Corey Haim when he was a child. That's right. It says in the My Truth documentary, the one that Corey Feldman put out earlier this week, Corey Feldman alleged that Corey Haim told him he was raped by Charlie Sheen on the 1985 set of, quote, Lucas. Sheen has denied the claims previously and does not issue a new denial in the film. Think about that. And that sucks, man. I actually like Charlie Sheen. But just like everybody else over there in Hollywood, they're satanic pedophiles. And, you know, just the same way that they promote empathy, compassion, boldly, autonomy, and justice, right? Isn't that self-exaltation? Liberation, right? Very, very crazy. You start thinking about what these people are pushing. This comes from Aaron Walia. They put this up March 10th. It's over there on Collective Evolution. It says Corey Feldman recently premiered his new film, My Truth, The Rape of Two Coreys, where he finally publicly named names. A project that was 3 years in the making finally premiered March 9th, 2020, commemorating the death of his best friend, Corey Haim. In the documentary, 6 people were accused of abusing him as well as his close friend and child star, Corey Haim, when they were children. Corey still feels that the pedophilia is actually one of the biggest problems within the industry. Corey has been speaking out about the issue for quite a long time and has been accused because he didn't name any names. But this all changed last night. One of the people Feldman accused was Charlie Sheen. He claimed in the film that Sheen was responsible for the rape of Corey Haim when he was a child. This allegedly took place on the set of the film Lucas, which premiered in 1986. It was written and directed by David Seltzer and starred Sheen, Haim, and Feldman's Goonies star, Cary Green. Since the online screening of Feldman's documentary failed due to technical issues, a tweet from journalist and author Amy Kaufman, who was one of the attendees at the LA Theater screening, revealed the name in the film. Sheen has been accused of raping deceased actor Corey Haim before, but he has always denied allegations. Casey Jordan, one of Sheen's former partners, said, quote, it's kind of like OJ. He gets away with murder. Charlie gets away with, being the party boy and whatnot of Hollywood. And I think that just somewhat falls in line that it makes it okay, when it's probably, in fact, of course, not. In November of 2017, the National Enquirer also published a report painting Sheen as a pedophile, claiming that he allegedly sodomized Haim and was responsible for sending him down a drug-fueled spiral. Documents obtained by TMZ indicate that Sheen later sued both the National Enquirer and Dominic Brescia. Sheen officially sued for defamation and false light. He also put out the following statement in December of 2017. He says, end quote, in my nearly 35 years as a celebrated entertainer, I have been nothing shy of a forthright, noble and valiant courier of the truth, consistently admitting and owning a laundry list of shortcomings, wrongdoings, and indiscretions that traveler hath traveled. However, every man has a breaking point. In the documentary, Feldman recalls the story that Corey Haim told him about the incident with Sheen. Quote, this wasn't like a one-time thing, he said in passing. It wasn't like, oh, by the way, this happened. He went into great detail. A crying Feldman said in the documentary about Haim, who died from pneumonia in 2010. Quote, he told me, Charlie, I don't want to say this next part because it is very graphic. Haim was 13 and Charlie Sheen was 19 when they worked together on the film set of Lucas. Yeah, if you guys want to read about that, it's kind of gross. It involves trailers, Costco oil, and other stuff that I don't want to say. Yeah. Very, very graphic wording. And it's a very simple sentence, and it's very gross. But continuing on, it says, thus far, no new statements have come from Charlie Sheen following the new allegations. Feldman has said prior to the film's release that he was worried about one of the names he was going to mention and that it was as big as Harvey Weinstein, who recently got jailed. That's right, you go into prison for 23 years, you dirtbag. It would be logical to assume that he was referring to Sheen. This is perhaps why Feldman was so keen on raising money for security and legal support following the release of the film. Then it goes on to talk about the bigger issue in Hollywood, which we all know is pedophilia and more. And this is what I mean by domestic degeneracy. This is why I'm here. Good Lord. As much as I love Charlie Sheen, it's not so much Charlie Sheen that I worried about or that I liked. I think it's the industry yourself that you know something's messed up about. The same way that you hear people saying, hey, I'm not from this world. That's right. You're here to make it a better one. It's not Charlie Sheen I'm worried about. It's the industry. That's why we're here, is because we know about the satanic pedophilia. We know about the chemtrails. We know about the GMOs. We know about the vaccines. We know about the Monsantos. We know about all this crazy stuff, the genetically modified babies. We know about all this stuff, the satanic super soldiers, the satanic pedophilia. We know about all this stuff. We're literally put here in this position to start exposing this stuff so we can start doing better. This is degeneracy. This is what I keep talking about, us not regenerating at a fast enough rate. And unfortunately, this is why some of these people in the upper echelons believe that they have the right to do these things, that they have the right to kill us and go through this extermination agenda. But you see, again, this is why we're here, to consciously be aware of these things, to fight them so that we do not engage in the culture that they're giving us. It's a culture of death. It's a culture of degeneracy. This is not one that acknowledges the divinity. This is not one that says pro-humans. This is not one that exalts God above all else. No. This is the one that worships man, that worships law, man's law, that worships all these things. They keep us off of our toes. They keep us off balance, off kilter, and not centered. This is, again, what I mean by domestic degeneracy. So, yeah, Satanists going around protesting people, Corey, Charlie Sheen running around, having tiger's blood, raping all kinds of people, Harvey Weinstein ending up in jail. I mean, shucks, just for the sake of continuity, I feel like I should get that up, just so we can have that on record. Good Lord. And this is, again, the culture that is in Hollywood. I'm not even going to read a whole lot of it. I'm just going to mention it right here. Harvey Weinstein sentenced to 23 years in prison after rape conviction. This comes from Signs of the Time. They put this up March 11th. It says, disgraced producer Harvey Weinstein was sentenced to 23 years in prison Wednesday in a Manhattan court. Weinstein was hit with a 23-year sentence, according to the Associated Press, which is just 6 years under the maximum sentence he could have received. Weinstein was convicted of rape in the third degree and committing a criminal sexual act in the first degree last month. And so as I close this segment out, before we go to the coronavirus, I was going to start talking about Joe Biden, and what's his name? Bernie Sanders. But then I thought to myself, God, I don't want to waste time talking about these two old farts. You got one guy that can barely remember anything, and then one guy that wants to take everything. I don't want to talk about this. This is where we've gotten. You know what? Better yet, if I say this, I think this is a better way for me to close out this segment. I have clawed, fought, scratched, tooth and nail to be here for everything I've gotten. Made myself better, trying to make myself better every single day. I ain't asking for handouts. That's why I get upset whenever I have to say, hey, join our exclusive members program. Do all these things. Support us, support us, support us. I'm not the type to look for handouts. I'm the type of person to build something up and say, if you want it, go ahead. If not, there's the door. But what's happening these days, and this is what happens when you teach obedience, submission, and control. What's happening these days is people are looking for handouts. People expect for their success to be given to them. They don't want to dig deep. They don't want to do the work. That's very dangerous. So when I'm talking about domestic degeneracy, what do you think, living in a world like this over extended periods of time, what do you think that's going to do to people's psyches? How do you think people are going to feel? Are they going to feel empowered? Are they going to feel incentivized towards success? Or are they going to think that in order for them to be successful, they've got to get the clothes, the cars, the drugs, the dro, they got to kill, cheat, steal, and murder. They got to do all these things. This is what happens when you take out like God, when you take out spirituality, when you really take out things that remind humanity of their fallen nature, right? But there is something within us that is even greater than where we are. This simple dichotomy that we play inside of our brains, this revives or resurrects something even greater in us that has been with us throughout time. But we're not having that happen these days, are we, gang? No. We're being told to be chicken-necked, scumbag, degenerate pieces of garbage that like gutter trash. That's not cool. I don't want to like gutter trash, man. I want to appreciate paintings. I want to appreciate great works of literature that explain the human condition and more, and describe to me the beauty that is God, that explains to me and exalts not only our culture, but the histories and how we've evolved and gotten to this point. I don't want to be relevant because what? I like taking mushrooms and doing things like this. You see how we're just living in this perverse, degenerate world and how it's just really destroying the concept of knowledge that is supposed to empower and enrich us. It's very dangerous. We're on a slippery slope, and I get angry because I'm just here to help. But speaking of help, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back on this episode of, I was going to say season 8, but it's not season 8. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Ameriquarantine, coronavirus Chan, all the crazy stuff that's going on with the coronavirus. Yeah, I have a lot of videos to play for you guys. The note that I have set up here for it, it's very lengthy, so I'm just going to try to shut up as much as I can, play videos for you guys, interject when I can, break down the coronavirus, America going underneath quarantine, and other things that I see taking place. Yeah, the world that we're entering into, 2020, is crazy. The future is here, and I don't think we're going back. But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be getting into this and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction on Factions of Freedom, and we'll be right back right after this.
We have a evacuation of all counties. I report complete devastation. We have a giant squall, cloud, probably up to the other path.
There are forces in this world that remind us of how fragile we are. We thought we were safe. We thought it could never happen to us. Then life like a fog descends upon us, blanketing our memories. Through the haze, we travel its hidden paths, lost in its secret places. And when the storm, turbulent and immovable, forces us to shelter, we remember. It calls to us, calls us back to the ports and the harbors of our past. We fight the currents that pull and drag us off course, not a light or star to chart the way. And when we arrive, we don't always know it at first, the places we once loved guised by time. Then we see it, the place we've been trying to get back to. Safe at last, we've found our way home.
Ameriquarantine. Welcome back. Salutations. Greetings. Welcome back to Ameriquarantine, where we're going to be talking about Coronavirus Chan and how Coronavirus Chan has entered into the chat. Coronavirus Chan. Coronavirus Chan. You know, I was at I took out my lady. We went to this nice little Mexican restaurant, and they had this live band playing. You know, one of them comes up to me in between the break. You know, they're like, "Oh, you guys look happy." Like, "Hey, how's it going? You're not affected by coronavirus?" It's like, "Hell no, we're not no, we're not affected by the coronavirus." And so he elbows me. I hug him. You know, and he's just like, you know, the Japanese, they had it right with the whole just bowing thing. And I said, oh, sorry. And so we just started like bowing to each other in the restaurant. Like, it's like, I don't have coronavirus, Chan. And I hope I don't seem like I'm being like extremely racist, because I know there's a lot of attacks happening to Asian Americans. Gun sales are up for Asian Americans because of this thing that's going on. But I say that to say that, you know, they did have it right. Nothing wrong with bowing. It's a sanitary way to show just to acknowledge somebody. It's a nice way to say hello. So, sayonara, konnichiwa, coronavirus-chan. So I need to stop, dude. But you get what I'm saying. This really has a lot of people worried. There's no real way to talk about this without sparking some kind of fear in people's hearts. And so what I appreciate happening now is a lot of people were saying, "Oh, coronavirus is a hoax. Coronavirus is a hoax. Coronavirus is a hoax." And now you don't really hear those people talking. If anything, what's happening is you hear you see posts coming out trying to downplay it, comparing it to the flu, as we did before in the previous segment. You see them trying to put out talking points saying, hey, downplay this, downplay this, downplay this. I actually appreciate that, because it offers a healthy counterpoint to people like myself who are literally freaking out about this. We're going to be reading stuff from Dr. Liz Specht. I read a little bit of that this week on Instagram Live with you guys, where we're going to read it in its entirety so people get a breakdown of what's going to happen. Thankfully, because, you know, I say thankfully because the 5D chess of all this other crazy crap and stuff is nuts. But thankfully, because, you know, Trump is putting us kind of in this emergency, we're going to start reacting to things. The infection rate's going to go down. It's crazy. I'm not calling for martial law. I'm not calling for forced vaccinations. I'm not calling for quarantine. I'm not calling for gun confiscations. I'm not calling for any of the kind of crazy crap that we see going on in China. I'm trying to say that something needed to happen in order for the infection rate to go down. For the weeks that we've been talking about it, that's why I've been telling people, you know, go get your immune system up. I've not been promoting vaccines. I've not been promoting antibiotics. I've been promoting, if anything, antivirals, herbal medicines, extracts, things like this. I'm really, really trying to let you guys know my point of view before we get into talking about all this crazy stuff, because regardless of how I feel, there are things taking place outside of our control. And so when you talk about the Smith Modernization Act, legalizing propaganda, you know, things like Operation Mockingbird, when you talk about the global health security agenda, them basically saying, hey, we're going to create this whole nationwide database on vaccine implementation, when you have them removing religious exemptions for people to get the vaccines. If you don't really pay attention to the history of how they're walking us up to this line, you really can't see what your options are, for one, and what their end goal is, for two. And so what we're going to be getting into here in Ameriquarantine, talking about coronavirus, Chan, is all this crazy stuff. As I've said before, I try to mention it in passing in the first segment. It's not necessarily the virus that we need to worry about. I'm just saying it like this. There's more to this virus than the actual disease. There are other things taking place that we really should be careful of. My God, just yesterday, I ordered a whole nother 4-week supply of emergency food. I saw Trump's response. Like, here's, I'll say this and I'll start getting into the topics. Here's how my yesterday went. Right? after I get done getting all the episode stuff together and getting all the videos and things together, I come home and then I see it happen on KRQE News. New Mexico has 3 presumptive cases. Somebody that came into contact from somebody from Egypt, and then another one that I guess came back from Iran. I'm not sure. And then I was like, oh my God, wow, that's crazy. And then I see my governor, Michelle Luann Grisham. She's holding a press conference, putting us into a public health emergency. And so I'm like, good Lord, okay, this is interesting. Maybe I start doing some digging locally. I finished watching that transmission. I do something around the house for a bit. And then Donald Trump's going live talking about the coronavirus and the different things that they were going to do. So I'm watching these things take place. You know, I told you guys too earlier this week that I had that we had to cancel our cruise that we were going to take next month. Seeing all these things take place, I'm just like, you know what? F it. If I'm not going on a cruise, I'm buying storable food, and we're getting sheltered in place. We're getting prepared, and that's it. That's the story. And so I woke up this morning. It's now Thursday, February 12th. Tomorrow will be Friday the 13th. It's February 12th. And it's just crazy to kind of see this evolve. I woke up today and Diamond Princesses has canceled all of their cruises for the next 2 months. So earlier this week, I'm freaking out about the cruise. Are these people going to refund me my money? By the end of the week, you know, I don't know. I'll deal with them later, but you get what I'm saying. This is nuts. The entire world is going into lockdown. Not just America, but the entire world. We'll get into Italy and everything else here as well. But just really understand what's happening. The flu did not shut all this stuff down. And I think that's why I had to casually mention it, and we'll mention it more in the segment. But the flu did not have this kind of response. There is something particular about the mutation, the transmission rate of this virus that's got the entire world scared. People smarter than me. So I'm going to listen to them. And with that being said, let's start getting into Ameriquarantine. Now, in the first half of this this segment, I'm going to basically be talking about like other countries, and then I'm going to talk about what happens here in America. We're going to talk about vaccines, China threatening the U.S., the UK, Moscow, Italy. We're going to be talking about all this type of stuff. So let's get into the flagship for this segment. Towards the end of 2019, December of 2019, there was a fantastic video that came out from scientists that were working at the World Health Organization saying we have a very shaky front line when it comes to vaccines. I made the tongue-in-cheek kind of joke saying, hey, it's kind of crazy how the World Health Organization admits that people don't trust vaccines anymore, and then out of nowhere, we have this bioweapon released where we would have to trust vaccines in order to get it cured. I think that's kind of strange, don't you? Let me play for you guys a quick clip. This comes from the Epoch Times. It's by Conan Miller. They put this up March 10th. It says, fears of loss of public confidence expressed at the World Health Organization vaccine conference. It says vaccine programs depend on public confidence, but trust is failing fast. One of the leading experts of vaccine confidence warned that without better science and a major shift in vaccine communications, vaccine programs could lose their most important supporters, doctors. Dr. Heidi J. Larson heads the Vaccine Confidence Project at the University of London's London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. The project aims to analyze concerns about immunization and steer the public toward sustained confidence in vaccine programs. But Larson says that confidence in vaccines is waning. Larson made that comment at the last World Health Organization Global Vaccine Summit in Geneva, Switzerland in December of 2019. Quote, we have absolutely different publics than we did 10 years ago. Larson told the summit attendees, which included leading figures in vaccine programs and research. Quote, they're demanding much more engagement, much more answers. When the vaccine schedule included just 6 vaccines, Larson says the public was on board. But over the years, something changed. As the number of vaccines climbed, public support began shifting rapidly. In order to get some sense of the rise in vaccine skepticism, Larson worked with scientists at the George Washington University to analyze various vaccine groups on Facebook. And then they just badmouth them there from then on. But what I'm going to do for you guys instead, spare you the trouble of hearing me talk, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you listen to the chief scientist at the World Health Organization. She's a pediatrician. Dr. Sumya Swaminathan, and she talks about, again, that faulty front line, people not trusting vaccines, because there are millions of different ways to boost your immune system. You don't have to contract these viruses. If anything, we end up becoming the test subject for these things. And again, people don't know about the vaccine injury funds. You can get affected by these. The science is not settled. So here, let me play for you guys this quick clip, and then we'll go from there.
Emphasize the fact that we really don't have very good safety monitoring systems in many countries, and this adds to the miscommunication and the misapprehensions, because we're not able to give clear-cut answers when people ask questions about the deaths that have occurred due to particular vaccine, and this always gets blown up in the media. One should be able to give a very factual account of what exactly is happening, what the cause of deaths are, but in most cases there's some obfuscation at that level, and therefore there's less and less trust then in the system. Putting in place the mechanisms, whether they're cohort studies or whether they're sentinel surveillance sites, to be able to monitor what's going on and report back, and then for corrective action to be taken, because unexpected things could arise after introduction, and one always has to be prepared. As we've seen, in the history of many drugs, you've heard about, learned about adverse events. Only I would emphasize the fact
adverse
that
effects. Just keep that in mind. I will. I'm writing it down as we speak. Adverse effects. This is said by the chief scientist, the chief scientist at the World Health Organization. Adverse effects after introduction. So it's like, oh no, we know there are adverse reactions as soon as stuff happens, but we try to keep that down to a minimum. Keep that in mind whenever we start talking about vaccines for the coronavirus, and why I am definitely not trying to push for that at all, and why we should be very wary of anybody that pushes that type of nonsense. The virus just came out, and they're already trying to talk about having a vaccine together for it. The thing is mutating at like an exponential rate, and they're thinking, hey, let's just start testing on the public. I think about what the CDC did like 44 tests this week in America. In South Korea, I think, conducted like at least 2,000. This is unacceptable. They are playing politics with our lives. And so just to shut up and just start getting into this, I want to read this article. It comes from the Minds Unleashed. They put this up March 7th. And it says, all hospital beds in the U.S. will be filled by May 8th, according to the analysis. And this is said by Dr. Liz Specht, a PhD in biology and the Associate Director of Science and Technology for the Good Food Institute. She's laid out her concerns in a lengthy tweet thread on Friday, and I'll read that here. And basically what it talks about is just not the breakdown of civilization or the healthcare system, but it just speaks to a lot of those conditions that we're not thinking about. People are still kind of stuck on whether or not this virus is real. What's going on? Is this going to hurt me? Is this going to hurt my grandma? Is this going to hurt my dogs? Can I vacation still? While people are worried about superficial things, people like Dr. Liz Specht breaks down what happens when we do politicize these types of events and we don't take corrective measures. You see. And so I'm just going to read to you what she's saying. And if you guys want to read this too, it's very lengthy. I may not get to it all, but let's just get into it. She put this up March 7th. It says, let's conservatively assume that there are roughly 2,000 current cases in the U.S. today, March 6th. This is about 8 times the number of confirmed lab diagnosed cases. We know that there is a substantial number due to the lack of test kits. I'll address the implications of that later on. She says we can expect that we'll continue to see a doubling of cases every 6 days. Here I mean actual cases. Confirmed cases may appear to rise faster in the short term due to new test kit rollouts. We're looking at about 1 million U.S. cases by the end of April, 2 million by May 5th, and 4 million by May 11th, and so on. Exponentials are hard to grasp, but this is how they go. As the healthcare system begins to saturate under this caseload, it will become increasingly hard to detect, track, and contain new transmission cases. In absence of extreme interventions, this likely won't slow until hitting greater than 1% of susceptible population. What does a caseload of this size mean for the healthcare system? We'll examine just 2 factors: hospital beds and masks, among many, many other things that will be impacted. The U.S. has about 2.8 hospital beds per 1,000 people. With a population of 330 million, this is roughly 1 million beds. At any given time, 65% of those beds are already occupied. That leaves about 330,000 beds available nationwide. Let's trust Italy's numbers and assume that about 10% of the cases are serious enough to require hospitalization. Before I continue reading on, you should know that the doctors coming out of Italy are saying we are being overwhelmed. This is even after them quarantining their population. On Sunday, when I did the episode with Lori, they had just initiated quarantine. A couple of days later, that was 25% of their population at the time on Sunday. A couple of days later, they quarantined the entire area. They quarantined Italy. And this is a few days later, okay? So just keep all these numbers in mind. She's just trying to run these numbers with the numbers and the information that was given at that time. Continuing on. Just keep in mind that for many patients, hospitalization lasts for weeks. In other words, turnover would be very slow as beds fill with COVID-19 patients. By this estimate, by May 18th, all hospital beds in the U.S. will be filled. This says nothing, of course, about whether the beds are suitable for isolation of patients with a highly infectious virus. If we're wrong by a factor of 2 regarding the fraction of severe cases, that only changes the timeline of the bed saturation by 6 days in either direction. If 20% of the cases require hospitalization, we run out of beds around May 2nd. If only 5% of the cases require it, we can make it until about May 14th. 2.5 gets us to May 20th. This, of course, assumes that there is no uptick in demands for beds from other non-COVID-19 related cases, which seems like a dubious assumption. As healthcare systems become increasingly burdened and pharmaceutical shortages, etc., people with chronic conditions that are normally well managed will find themselves slipping into severe states of medical distress, requiring intensive care and hospitalization. But let's ignore that for now. I hope you guys are gradually starting to get the picture of what's going on and why this lazy, slack response we're seeing in government is very dangerous, because what's going to end up happening is, instead of us trying to stop the curve from happening, we're just going to be chasing this curve. If drastic, and this is the crazy part about it, that's why Tedros Ghebreyesus, the Secretary General of the World Health Organization, praised President Xi Jinping of China for the draconian measures that they enacted over there. We don't want those draconian measures here. But it's because, again, we're not doing the plug and play. We're not looking at the numbers. We're thinking America won't be infected. But here, let me continue on. It says, all right, so that's the beds. Now, for masks, feds say that we have a national stockpile of 12 million N5 masks and 30 million surgical masks, which are not ideal, but they're better than nothing. There are about 18 million healthcare workers in the U.S. Let's assume only 6 million healthcare workers are working on any given day. This is an unlikely estimate, as most people work days most of the week, but again, I'm playing conservative at every turn. As COVID-19 cases saturate virtually every state and country, which seems likely to happen any day now, it will soon be irresponsible for all healthcare workers to not wear a mask. These healthcare workers would burn through N59 stockpiles in 2 days if each healthcare worker was only given 1 mask per day. I'll say that one more time. As COVID-19 cases saturate virtually every state and country, which seems likely to happen any day now, it will soon be irresponsible for all healthcare workers to not wear a mask. These healthcare workers would burn through the N95 stockpile in 2 days if each healthcare worker only got 1 mask per day. 1 per day would neither be sanitary nor pragmatic, though this is indeed what we saw in Wuhan, with healthcare workers collapsing on their shift from dehydration because they were trying to avoid changing their PPE suits as they cannot be reused. How quickly could we ramp up productions of new masks? Well, just last week, I remember talking about Vice President Mike Pence going to 3M saying, hey, we're going to need you to make a couple 100,000 of these every month. And it's because of this situation right here. They've got to ship it out. And we'll talk about it later on in the segment too. But New York Governor Andrew Cuomo developing their own hand sanitizer. It got bad responses on the page, but I think that's a good thing. But continuing on, getting back into this, how quickly could we ramp up productions of new masks? Not very fast at all. The vast majority of manufactured overseas, almost all in China. Even when manufactured here in the U.S., the raw materials are predominantly from overseas. Again, predominantly from China. Keep in mind that all countries globally will be going through the same exact crisis and shortages Simultaneously, we cannot force trade in our favor. Now consider how these two factors, beds and masks shortages, compound on each other's severity. Full hospitals plus full masks plus healthcare workers running around between beds without proper PPE. It's a very bad mix. Healthcare workers are already getting infected even with access to full PPE. In the face of the PPE limitations this severe, it's only a matter of time. Healthcare workers will start dropping from workforce for weeks at a time, leading to a shortage of workers that then further compound both issues above. We could go on and on about the thousands of factors, the number of ventilators, or even simple things like saline drip bags, but you see where this is going. Importantly, I cannot stress this enough. Even if I'm wrong, even very wrong, about core assumptions like percentage of the severe cases and the current case drop, it only changes the timeline by days or weeks. This is how exponential growth in an immunologically naive population works. Undeserved panic does not do any good, neither does ill-informed complacency. It is wrong to assuage the public by saying only 2% will die. People are adequately grasping the national and the global systemic burden wrought by the swift moving of a disease. She goes on to say that I'm an engineer. This is what my mind does all day. I run back of the envelope calculations to try to estimate out of order magnitude impacts. I have a high alarm about this disease since January 19th after reading clinical indicators in the first papers emerging in Wuhan. Nothing in the last 6 weeks has dampened my alarm to the slightest. To the contrary, we're seeing abject refusal of many countries to adequately respond or repair. Or, of course, some of these estimates will be wrong, even substantially wrong, but I have no reason to think that these are out of order magnitude wrong. Even if your personal risk of death is very, very low, don't mock decisions like canceling events or closing workplaces as undue panic. These measures are the bare minimum we should be doing to try to shift the peak, to slow the rise in cases so that the healthcare systems are less overwhelmed. Each day that we delay an extra case is a big win for the healthcare system. And so I'm going to stop there if you guys want to learn more about it, but you get the point. I hope you guys get the point. That's how we're starting this segment. Thank you, Dr. Jennifer Speck. You're not going to hear people talking about that because that's way too much truth. That scares the hell out of me. Forgive my language. That's people thinking like this. That's what I'm telling you. People are not equipped with the mental faculties to process, break down, analyze, project, and predict this. They don't want to. They're trying to say this is a hoax because what they do know scares the hell out of them, and they don't want to scare people, so they want to downplay it. I can't do that here. The same way that we get up over here and talk about all this other crazy stuff, I can't do that to you. I'm looking at right now that little sticky note I had where we had 60 U.S. cases, and we're pushing 1,000 now. I made a joke this week about how what's going to happen when we reach 5,000 cases. Are people still going to say it's a hoax? This is very dangerous. But I don't have time to sit up over here and do this with people. Moving on to make you more aware of the severity of the situation right here. China threatens to withhold all medical exports. The United States will fall into the hell of a coronavirus outbreak epidemic. And we've been talking about this since the entirety of this. We learned that 80+% of our pharmaceuticals are manufactured in China. China. And Coronavirus Chan has them held hostage. If we don't get any antivirals, antibiotics, oh my God. I went over the list of just random stuff that would be affected by this week, and I'll put that link for you guys in the description bar below. It's nuts. This is the problem with globalization. This is the problem with the trade war. This stuff is nuts. I digress. Let me get in this article. We put this up March 10th. It comes from Daisy Luther over there at the Sons of Liberty Media. And it says, as China allegedly conquers the spread of the COVID-19 outbreak that began in Wuhan, it appears that they are right back to considering the United States as an enemy. On Xinhua Net, the Communist Party's news outlet, they threatened to withhold all medical exports to the U.S., at the same time asking for a, quote, apology from the U.S. and, quote, gratitude from the rest of the world. This comes at the most crucial point of an outbreak that originated in their own country. Xinhua Net is the biggest news agency in China and very, quote, influential. The outlet is the official state-run press agency, so anything found on the website is straight from the communist government. An article titled, quote, "The World Should Thank China," which was published on March 4th, covered the outbreak of COVID-19 in the United States. The article suggests that the U.S. data is suspicious because all cases of the coronavirus must be confirmed by the CDC. I can't disagree with them that our numbers are questionable. It shows a photograph of people praying in the White House after meeting with Trump. Very, very crazy. Xinhua News Net goes on to tout that the control they have taken over the outbreak, saying that Trump admires their handling of the crisis and that this, quote, remarks came from the bottom of his heart. At the same time, Xinhua Net criticized the U.S.'s perceived mistreatment of China, citing the travel ban and the evacuation of American citizens from Wuhan, the heart of the outbreak. This caused, according to Xinhua Net, other countries to isolate China from the rest of the world, causing them economic harm. A translated version of the article says this: "These practices in the United States are very unkind. They can be described as falling into the ground and killing people where they are ill. And now it is believed that China has contained the outbreak and they're back to business as usual. They may want to exact some kind of vengeance for this unkindness." And of course, this remains the question. Do they even currently possess the capability to manufacture these medical products? Or is this all a way to save face because their workforce is decimated and the virus is actually not contained at all? How did China threaten the U.S.? In the article, China suggests that they could easily get even with the United States for their perceived mistreatment of China during the outbreak by cutting off medical supplies while we are in the midst of our own outbreak. If China retaliates against the United States at this time, in addition to announcing a travel ban on the United States, it will also announce strategic control over medical products and ban exports to the United States. Then the United States will be caught in the ocean of a new crown virus. According to the U.S. CDC officials, most masks in the United States are made in China and imported from China. If China bans the exports of these masks to the United States, then the United States will fall into the mask shortage, and the most basic measure to prevent the new crown virus can't do it. So you get the point. That's just if they withhold masks. That's just if they withhold masks. Just say, hey, no, we're not going to give you masks. We're not going to let you guys be able to protect yourself. This is the problem with globalization. We don't produce anything here. We ain't making jack squat. We're only making trouble. You see? So again, just keep this type of stuff in mind. This next article I'm going to bring up to you guys is hopefully, adds a little bit of levity to the situation. A lot of people ended up liking it this week simply because of what it's talking about. But right here, MIT scientist claims that the coronavirus is a deep state fraud. Says that the hysteria is being fueled to manipulate financial markets. This is, again, what they mean by the trade war. This is put up by Paul Joseph Watson over there at Summit.News. They put this up March 10th. It says MIT scientist Shiva Ayyadurai claims that the coronavirus fear-mongering is a deep state fraud to manipulate financial markets. Ayyadurai, who is noted for his controversial claim to be the inventor of email, has a PhD in biological engineering and is running as a Republican in the 2020 U.S. Senate election in Massachusetts. Responding to President Donald Trump's claims that the Democrats and the media are responsible for inflaming the coronavirus scare, quote, far beyond what the facts would warrant, Ayyadurai agreed that the panic was being overblown for political and economic reasons. I would have to agree. Quote, as an MIT PhD in biological engineering who studies and does research nearly every day on the immune system, the coronavirus fear-mongering by the deep state will go down in history as one of the biggest frauds to manipulate economies, suppress dissent, and push mandated medicine, tweeted Ayyadurai. Indeed, no matter the true scale of the crisis, there's little doubt that the Democrats have seized upon it to blame Trump for the recent stock market crash, almost to the point of cheering on the chaos. While Trump has been blasted for leaving the United States ill-prepared to deal with a potential pandemic with just 5,000 people in the U.S. being tested for the virus, others have asserted that the crisis has been hijacked by Trump's political adversaries to blame him unfairly. Whether one treats the outbreak as a significant threat to the world or an overhyped hysteria does appear to break down along partisan lines. A Reuters Ipsos poll released last week found that Democrats are twice as likely as Republicans to say that the virus poses an imminent threat. I could care less about the politics of it. Whether or not you're prepared is up to you. But to stick to what Dr. Ayurveda said, really understanding that this is being pushed for so many different things. Again, that's what I'm trying to explain. There's more to this virus than just the disease itself. There's the socioeconomic implications, the socio-political ramifications, putting a country on lockdown, putting the world on lockdown. Again, just to kind of counter what the good doctor is saying right there, Dr. Shiva Ayurveda, he's not wrong and he's not right. That's the crazy thing. Because what I have to say is the flu did not shut down over 440 trade shows and exhibitions. The flu did not shut down Coachella, South by Southwest, Ultra Fest, the NBA for an entire season and more. Hell, herpes didn't even shut down Coachella last year. So why is the coronavirus so important? What is going on with this disease? You know, earlier this week, there was a UK lab that was beginning to offer people like $4,000+ to inject people with the coronavirus. They're like, hey, guess what? If you're a broke millennial like myself, right? You need some extra cash. You kids want to earn some extra cash? How about you come up over here to the UK? We'll give you $4,000. You just shoot this coronavirus in your body and let us observe you. You know, we'll watch you. We'll pay for your whole trip. We'll pay for your whole treatment. It's like, well, what happens if they actually contract the coronavirus? Can you get it out of them, or at the $4,000? Is that what your life is worth? So, is it a deep state fraud? You know, will we become guinea pigs? I don't know. And this is all stuff that's going around the world before we get here to America. Because check this out right here. Moscow has gone on high alert, threatens 5 years in jail for breaking self-quarantine. Shucks, I even had to ask the question earlier this week, what happens whenever self-quarantine becomes forced quarantine? Whenever you're going through self-isolation, right? What is forced isolation? We put this up March 9th. It's from the Activist Post. It says, though Russia thus far hasn't been as hard as hit as other countries, with 17 now confirmed out of a population of 145 million. Among those likely are some initially evacuated from the epicenter of the Wuhan province, China. Authorities are not taking any chances in enacting extreme measures to prevent the spread. The city government of Moscow has, as of Sunday, imposed a high alert regime of mandatory self-quarantine for those that have recently visited foreign countries with an infected population. The penalty for such designated citizens if they leave their homes and break the quarantine is up to 5 years in jail, Moscow City Hall has threatened. Authorities are reportedly even going as far as to set up a CCTV camera in place of self-isolation in order to monitor conformity. Monitor conformity. Over the past 2 days, over the 2-day period of the last Friday through Saturday, Russian health authorities announced a total of 10 new cases, taking the number to 17, 3 of whom have now reportedly recovered. Most of the recent cases had traveled in Italy. Currently, there are hundreds, if not thousands, across the country who have been ordered into quarantine. So far, there's nothing to suggest that city authorities have actually, as of yet, handed down any legal or jail penalties related to the coronavirus crisis, or if they would follow through with it should someone break self-quarantine. Last month, however, 88 foreign nationals were deported over breaking quarantine protocols. Return visitors from highly impacted countries will be especially monitored. That's what Reuters reports. Those who return from China, South Korea, Iran, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain, and other states showing possible unfavorable signs of a coronavirus should self-isolate themselves at home for 14 days, Moscow City Hall has said. The Moscow Health Department said on Sunday that those disregarding the regulation risked severe punishment, including imprisonment up to 5 years. That's right. Imagine that, 5 years? 5 years. So how long are we going to be dealing with this is my real question. You get me? And so this is just, it's really crazy to see all this stuff unfold. So Moscow is giving people 5 years if they break quarantine, as Italy has extended its quarantine to the entire country.
Want to bring you the latest from Italy. This is the Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte speaking. We are just hearing that Prime Minister Conte saying that there will no longer be this red zone in the north of the country. All of Italy is now going to be under the same condition. All of Italy now, in effect, quarantined. Prime Minister Conte saying people should not move other than for work and emergencies. That means that the whole country is affected in lockdown. He says all public gatherings will be banned. Now, not being very clear there what he defines by a public gathering, whether that includes restaurants and shops and things like that. No numbers on that yet, but we'll monitor very closely what the Prime Minister is saying there. He says Prime Minister Conte is also saying the right behaviour for people now is to stay at home, and this is covering the whole of Italy. The whole of Italy now declared a red zone, people being advised to stay at home, all public gatherings banned, and this comes on the day that Italy reported an increase in coronavirus cases of over 1,700. So even more draconian measures introduced there, announced there by Italy's Prime Minister, and doing it live, as you can see there, in a press conference after yesterday's extension of the quarantine zone in the north leaked early, and many people are thought to have been able to get out of those quarantine zones. Well, if they stayed in Italy, they're not out of them now. The whole of the country declared a red zone. More on that as we hear from Italy's Prime Minister.
All of Italy declared a red zone. No travel. In, out, through, around. Nope, no travel. I just want to play this video real quick. This happened, I think, like a couple days before, or like the day of. Like a day before there were outbreaks, or there was people breaking out of prisons in Italy. Audio listeners, you can't see it clearly because you're listening, but what I'm playing right now is a video that comes from Summit.News, Paul Joseph Watson, and basically it's a jail. At least 20 different inmates breaking out of a jail in Foggia as riots erupted at 27 different Italian prisons nationwide in response to the coronavirus outbreak. Nationwide, people were freaking out because they did not want to be stuck inside of these prisons. They understand that it's transmissible even through the air. If you share even a cell, because of the circulated air that's inside of that whole prison, some people are going to be exposed to it. So yeah, people are breaking out. Another video I'm playing for you guys real quick here too is of these Italians being told to stay indoors via loudspeakers. There's a car driving down the street just telling people, stay inside, stay inside. This also, again, comes from Paul Joseph Watson over there at Summit.News. Why don't you think they want us to talk about it? Here we go.
Si invita la cittadinanza a restare in casa e ad uscire solo per approvvigionamento alimentare o farmaceutico, nel rispetto delle norme anticontagio, e cioè con mascherine per proteggersi.
And for our audio listener, or for our video listeners, if you're wondering why it's in Chinese, some people have said that it's in Chinese because the Chinese are running this drill along with the cover-up. I'm not sure. They're speaking in Italian, but I think they converted it to Chinese just so they could see what other countries were doing. It says Italians are being told to stay inside unless they need to buy medicines by health authorities patrolling neighborhoods with loudspeakers as the coronavirus quarantine begins to take hold. This comes literally a week or so after, a week or two maybe, after them talking about the pasta shelves being empty. I remember playing a clip for you guys of fights breaking out in supermarkets. An older gentleman saying that there wasn't this much chaos even in World War II. The pasta shelves are gone. Madonna mia. He's worried about things that are happening. And then this week, the whole of Italy goes into quarantine. So I just talked to you guys about what's going on in the UK, what's going on in Moscow, what's going on in Italy, right? America is not isolated from this event. I think people need to understand that. America is not isolated from this. As much as people want to think, it's a hoax, or, I don't got to worry about this. I'm American. That's very elitist of us. It's very ignorant of us. It's very dangerous, that whole thought process. because the realest talk of it all is we're still learning the lethality. We are the history of this disease. We're learning how crazy it is. Before I play this quick clip for you guys, this is this clip from renowned Johns Hopkins surgeon Martin McRae talking about what happened in Wuhan and how that could happen here. Before I play that clip for you guys, I want to read this post that we put up before we came on to the air. It comes from STHF Plans by Max Lava. They put this up March 12th. It says the important differences and similarities between the COVID-19 and the flu. It said the coronavirus is not exactly like the flu, although both have similar symptoms. But the differences are important, as are the similarities. Some of the symptoms of both the seasonal flu and the coronaviruses are aches and pains, sore throat, and a fever. These can also be symptoms of the common cold. They also may feel similar to those suffering from their symptoms, but it's also important to note that the coronavirus is not the same as the seasonal flu. Experts stressed Wednesday. The COVID-19, the illness caused by the novel coronavirus, proves deadly in around 3.5% of confirmed cases. While this is not as the same as the mortality rate, given many people may not be infected but not realize it, it is significantly higher than the seasonal flu, which is typically kills 0.1% of all patients. Quote, there is still considerable uncertainty around the fatality rates of the COVID-19, and it likely varies depending on the quality of the local healthcare, said Francois Ballot, professor of computational science biology at the University College of London, according to Science Alert. Quote, that said, it is around 2% on average, which is about 20 times higher than the seasonal flu lineages currently in circulation. Hospitals could easily become overwhelmed with coronavirus patients, especially if several million people ended up contracting the virus, especially considering it's much easier to get the coronavirus than the flu. Disease experts estimate that each COVID-19 sufferer infects between 2 to 3 others. That's a reproduction rate of up to twice as high as the seasonal flu, which typically infects 1.3 people for each patient. It's making containment difficult, and testing for the virus hasn't been up to par, according to health experts. What is similar, however, is important to note too. You can both prevent both viruses by improving your hand washing, boosting your immune system, and wearing a face mask if you are infected. Masks can be up to 80% effective if worn correctly. Avoid getting sick and taking the appropriate measures to ensure your immune system is in decent shape. That includes cutting back on alcohol and nicotine and getting a good night's sleep. Eating right can also help your immune system. That's what I'm going to be doing with you guys in the coming days, is breaking down just different lifestyle changes that you can make to get your health back. I mean, we talk about it all the time, but setting aside some time where we actually do it. Now, that's the difference between the COVID-19 and the flu, because people want to say it's not like the flu, don't worry. You're right. It's worse than the flu. It's stronger than the flu. You could catch it easier than the flu. You're right. You're right. But the crazy thing is this particular strain is man-made, and it's also evolving. We have a series of protocols, vaccines, antivirals, and antibiotics to help stifle the flu. We're learning how to deal with this beast today. Now, let me play for you guys this quick clip of, again, Dr. Martin McRae talking about what happened in Wuhan and how that can happen here. Let's listen.
I am concerned about what we saw over the weekend on cable news. A lot of legacy pundits talking about their opinions. Look, we've got some data now that we've got to act on. We need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And what we know is that China and Iran have not been straightforward. Those numbers are not reliable. We have talked to doctors over there, and they say their hospitals have been overrun. But Italy and South Korea have been very transparent. And what we're seeing over there right now is that they've taken drastic measures, and even with that, the hospitals in northern Italy right now are overrun. We've seen a doubling of cases and deaths nearly every 1 to 3 days. And although we've been under testing, we've seen a tenfold increase in the last 10 days. And that's not even really, with testing everybody. So, look, I don't like the idea of talking about contingency plans, but we've got to start making these plans. We've got to get restaurants to get into the delivery business right now. We've got to brace for a 3-month problem, because you know what? What happened in Wuhan could happen here. Why do we think otherwise?
So you think, are we not doing enough at this point in terms of making sure schools are closed, making sure people that they're working from home, not going to work? What's your thought?
Yeah, we need to tell people right now to stop all non-essential travel. I feel strongly about that. Simply saying that high-risk people should not take cruises is not enough.
Yeah.
I am concerned about what we saw.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of different factors with this virus, and the kind of lax response we're seeing is actually dangerous. Like I said before, if we don't start doing, if we're not proactive in our response, we're just going to be chasing the curve, trying to hopefully whittle this thing down. That's why I asked the question of how long are we going to be dealing with this? Is it 1 to 3 months, 3 to 5 months? How long will we be dealing with this? And so I just want to jump back to something that caused a lot of stir this weekend. A lot of crazy stuff happened this weekend, simply for putting this controversial post up. It got me messages, it got me emails, it got me a lot of crazy things that I didn't want to really break down and talk about. But right here, here's what's coming to America as the coronavirus spreads. Medical martial law. Now, a lot of people didn't want to talk about this, and I just have to say this because this is kind of how a lot of this work goes. We are usually a week or two ahead of time before a lot of people. It's like that with the news. It's like that with our analysis. It's just how this goes. Sad part, sad truth. It's just how this is. And so when we posted this, people were like, oh, you're fear-mongering. Oh, this page is nothing. Oh, this page has become just like the mainstream media, blah, 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 blah. Insert whatever makes you feel good because I'm the bad guy. Okay, the work that we do, we just look straight into the abyss. We tell you the truth. We don't really care if you like it or not. We're just doing the forecasting and projecting. When I'm telling you that what you saw in China in some way, shape, or form is going to come here. Don't worry. I'm going to get to the New York activating its National Guard to combat the coronavirus. I'm going to be talking about medical martial law, putting troops on the streets. I'm going to be talking about this stuff. But when I posted this last week, it's like I whizzed in people's cereals. You know, it's like I became Hussein. Oh, I don't know what's his name. I'm trying to think of like the terrorist guy. But you get what I'm trying to say. I became such a bad person for talking about this that I borderline just wanted to shut the comments down just so people could read. And that's the truth. Whenever people are confronted with this type of information, the easiest thing they can do is shut down, deny. I don't want to hear these things, even though I can see it. You guys tune into the work to the episode and the work we do all the time. There's nothing different from this. That's just crazy because we're in these days. Let me get into this. We put this up March 6th. It was originally published by Mike Adams over there at Natural News. And it says now that the CDC has invoked its, quote, rule by secrecy mode by hiding coronavirus testing numbers in order to deceive America, it is abundantly obvious that the coronavirus outbreak in America is going to be used to invoke medical martial law. There are already thousands of infections across America that have not yet been tested, all by design, of course, as the CDC withheld testing kits from hospitals and local health officials across the country. By our best estimates, there are currently 5,000 and 10,000 infections in America, mostly along the West Coast, Seattle and Northern California, with outbreaks taking place in New York City, Miami, Chicago, and other major cities. Right now, domestic air travel is spreading the virus like crazy, since it spreads during the asymptomatic phase when people don't even know that they're infected. There is currently no screenings of domestic air travelers, and no domestic flight routes have been locked down. That was at the time. Trump recently said he shut that down. Importantly, the coronavirus has already broken containment in America and is now impossible to contain. It will impact every city in America. Here are a few of my predictions for where we're going with this. So buckle up and get ready because the coronavirus is coming to a city near you. And I say this was put up 5 days ago. I'm out here in New Mexico. We now have cases. 1. Hospitals will be overrun in regions of America. 2. Entire cities in America will be placed under quarantine, lockdown status. 3. School closures will become commonplace. 4. Over the coming week, there will be tens of thousands of infections confirmed in America, or tens of infections in America, like 10, 20, 30, 40, tens of infections confirmed in America. 5. Within 30 days, if lab testing is allowed to take place, you will see hundreds of coronavirus infections confirmed in America. 6. Within 90 days, if the labs are legitimately trying to test everyone they can, you will see thousands of coronavirus infections confirmed in America. By June, in other words, there will be thousands of confirmed infections in America and possibly over 10,000 by that time. 7. Unless there's a miracle intervention, eventually the number of coronavirus infections confirmed in America will exceed 100,000. This is mathematically inevitable, especially with the widespread negligence, incompetence, and even criminal maliciousness of federal agencies that are right now telling Americans to not prepare. The federal government, of course, may never allow these numbers to see the light of day, since the CDC and the Trump administration now appear to be modeling their response after the Communist Party. 8. Restrictions on domestic air travel, armed highway checkpoints. Once the quarantine begins, you will see armed roadside checkpoints and domestic air travel restrictions put in place. America will become a medical police state. Now, when I talked about that last week, when I posted that, you guys go read it for yourself. I'm not going to waste time. I'm not going to waste time on it. But I really upset a lot of people by posting that, and that's just the sad truth of the matter. And then this week, we're hearing how other states are going underneath emergency. We're hearing it gradually begin to set in. Just really think about what's happening. We've been covering this for almost basically since my birthday, since the end of January. And now, March 6th, now, on Friday, 6 days ago, we're like a week behind, Trump decided to sign the coronavirus bill. Yeah. So this is what I mean by the lackadaisical response.
So we're signing the 8.3 billion. I asked for 2.5, and I got 8.3, and I'll take it.
And so I'm not gonna sit up over here and waste a lot of time watching Trump sign something and then showing it off because he's super proud. Okay, we're not that type of show. Thank you for signing that. I asked the question earlier this week: why were we held hostage for $8.3 billion? Why are Americans' lives being jeopardized because this guy's not getting the money that he wants? I didn't see President Xi Jinping sign anything. I didn't see Italy's prime minister sign anything. I didn't see the prime minister of Australia sign anything. Why did America have to sign an $8.3 billion basically stimulus package to respond to this? What's going to happen over this time period within that $8.3 billion being spent? Just yesterday, Trump announced financial breaks for people with within the SBA, the Small Business Alliance, workers' comp for people who are working in the health field, all kinds of different things like that as well. What happens if businesses shut down for 2 to 3 months? So very, very interesting to see that happen. But again, that's what I mean by the socioeconomic, socio-political things that are taking place because of this. This is nuts, dude. This is nuts. So when Dr. Martin Marquet says that what happened in Wuhan could happen here, we're trying to make sure we take the steps so that that does not happen. It's already gradually happening, but we're trying to make sure that the steps are taken so that it doesn't happen. But continuing on with Ameriquarantine and how the coronavirus has hit the shores of America. Right here, and we briefly talked about this in a variation last week. It says that there are Border Patrol agents being provided respirators. We talked about that 2 weeks ago, about Border Patrol being provided respirators to deal with Chinese migrants. This week, this comes from Zero Hedge. This week, we're hearing how the Pentagon is deploying troops to the California border to block the surge of possibly infected migrants. That's right. We have we're California border. I'm talking about Texas border. You got to think about it. The immigration invasion is still going on. What was going on with the migrants in Turkey and Greece? That's still real. The wave after wave of people that are coming here, that's still real. Let me get into this article. We put this up March 9th. It's from Zero Hedge. It says the Pentagon is sending 160 soldiers to California's border with Mexico in order to assist Border Patrol agents resist an anticipated surge in migrants if the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals strikes down migrant protection protocols, according to Breitbart. Approximately 60,000 migrants have been returned to Mexico prior to their U.S. asylum hearings through the MPP program, which is aimed at preventing migrants from obtaining work in the United States, according to the report. Some of the 30,000 migrants waiting in Mexico rushed for the border February 28th when the court declared the MPP program to be illegal. The court then quickly put a stay on its decision to block the MPP until March 12th, pending any Supreme Court intervention. The California-based court also decided to allow the MPP program to operate in Texas. Officials at the Department of Justice have asked the Supreme Court to extend the delay. Trump administration officials added that the troops could help prevent the migration of people carrying diseases such as coronavirus. On Friday, the Washington Examiner reported that the U.S. border officials have blocked hundreds of foreigners from entering the country at land ports of entry along the Canadian and Mexican borders, according to a senior Homeland Security official. Quote, "We've turned away people on both borders, hundreds of them. In total, during the course of the last month, we're under 1,000, but you're in the hundreds to give you a ballpark sense," said Deputy Secretary of DHS Ken Cuccinelli. It goes on to say that Customs and Border Protection officials say that their duty is to, quote, "secure our nation's borders, and measures such as the Crisis Response Force employment allow CBP to do just that based on the pending MPP decision. Continued concerns of large groups attempting to forcibly enter through ports of entries and COVID-19 containment and mitigation concerns, CBP has activated the Crisis Response Force." So that's right, you have Border Patrol out there as well. I think I just have to kind of point this out. Kind of what we're seeing happen in response to this is medical martial law, varying different alphabet agencies given more power and more money and more funding to do more extreme things that we are already kind of skeptical of. But a crisis like this just gives them everything they need, like the archetypal thing, never let a good crisis go to waste, problem, reaction, solution. That's what this is. These institutions that are already here that kind of violate your civil liberties and are not this, I don't want to say like constitutionally empowered, but you get what I'm trying to say. These institutions that are here are going to have even more power to do things like snatch you, like detain you, and disappear you. And so I find that very crazy, but you get the point. You get the point. And so that's this week. And again, I told you last week you had Washington, Florida, Los Angeles, Oregon declare either a state of emergency or a health of emergency. This is what's going on. There's a lot of different factors that are going on, but people just don't want to think. It's still a hoax. I've been hoaxing you this whole time, gang. Can't you tell? I've been hoaxing you the whole time. I'm just here to josh you. Don't you know? I'm just here to mess with you. Yeah, it's a hoax. It's a hoax as the state of Washington is about to undergo medical martial law to stop the virus from infecting 64,000 people by May. Warns Governor Inslee. This is said by Mike Adams over there at Natural News. They put this up March 10th. It says, just as we've modeled and predicted, medical martial law is now being implemented across America to contain the spread of the coronavirus. As of this writing, there are now 804 confirmed infections across America, and the number is rising by 100 per day, which was also warned about 2 weeks ago, rather precisely. Earlier today, New York Governor Cuomo activated the National Guard to create a, quote, containment zone around an infected community there, New Rochelle. And now we're getting word that the Washington state, that Governor Inslee fully recognizes that unless they issue a mandatory quarantine order, there are up to 64,000 new coronavirus infections that will occur by May. This is unfolding exactly as we've been predicting in our model, quote, pandemic projection model, the spreadsheet, which can be downloaded. You guys, I'll put that in the description bar below. You can download it. By the end of next week, you can download the spreadsheet, plug and play numbers to kind of see where things are. I'm not really good at math, but I know that we have smarter people listening than myself. If you guys want to download that, I'll put that link in the description bar below. Try to see the numbers and see why there are certain precautions that need to be taken in order, like shutting down the flights, shutting down schools, risking exposure and things like this. cutting back travel, all these things that needs to take place so that the virus doesn't spread. It's very crazy. Continuing on, it says via comonews.com, it says up to 64,000 people could be infected with the coronavirus in Washington state within 2 months if actions aren't taken now to spread it, Governor Inslee said on Tuesday. Although the number of confirmed cases is now 162, Inslee said experts believe that the actual number could be 1,000 or more at the present time. Quote, what the experts are telling us is that the number of people who are infected will double in anywhere from 5 to 8 days unless we take some real action. The governor said at a morning news conference, quote, and if you do the math, it gets very disturbing. If it's 1,000 infections today, in 7 to 8 weeks, there could be 64,000 people infected in the state of Washington if we don't somehow slow down this epidemic. And in the next week, it could be 120,000. And in the next week, 250,000. We need to look forward and get ahead of the curve in Washington state. If we are going to stop this epidemic or seriously slow it down, we need to focus on what's coming, not what's here today. So when they say medical martial law, that means isolating certain areas. Again, they're saying self-quarantine because when it hits forced quarantine, that's a completely different situation. They're really trying to gradually preempt people saying, hey, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. It's going to get to a point to where enough states are in emergency that you're going to have your rights robbed from you and you're just going to have to follow orders. That's what they mean by a medical police state, medical martial law, medical tyranny. And a virus like this gives them everything they need. So that's Washington state possibly going underneath a state of emergency to help curb the infections. Massachusetts has just declared a state of emergency as well after 92 residents tested positive for the coronavirus.
The number of reported cases has seen a significant uptick in the United States and in Massachusetts, and our state health officials are closely monitoring and tracing presumptive cases here. MEMA has been activated and is bringing together health, human service, public safety, and several other government agencies. And this working group is following the Department of Public Health's infectious disease task force that was stood up in January. Today, I'm declaring a state of emergency in Massachusetts. This declaration will give our administration more flexibility to respond to this evolving outbreak. The number of reported cases has seen a significant uptick in the United States.
Yeah, crazy. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker declared a state of emergency for the state on Tuesday. He said in a press conference that the declaration would give his government more flexibility, more power, more flexibility to respond to this evolving outbreak. Massachusetts Health and Human Services Secretary Mary Lou Sutter said that the state has 51 presumptive positive cases of the coronavirus, bringing Massachusetts' total number of confirmed or presumed positive cases to 92. So the coronavirus has hit America. I know people don't want to talk about it. People don't want to think about it. But the coronavirus has hit America. Something we need to talk about is what happens if it hits a major populated area. You know, I went over this briefly this week on the Instagram Live I did with you guys. Operation Gotham Shield, a exercise that was done by FEMA in 2017, where they tried to track a nuclear blast being detonated in Manhattan. I went over that this week on Instagram Live, but for some strange reason, I feel like I should bring it up here with you guys. Operation Gotham Shield, U.S. government to, quote, simulate a nuke blast over Manhattan. Now, the coronavirus is not a nuke blast, but it could have something of the same deadly effect. You see. And it's a tabletop exercise put together by FEMA, consisting of law enforcement, military, chemical, biological units, all kinds of different things like that, to work in United States' foremost urban center, New Jersey, Manhattan, New Jersey, to simulate a nuke going off. What happens if FEMA has to take over? Keep this type of stuff in mind as we're just gradually, casually talking about medical martial law, countries being or states being given power, all the crazy stuff that we're just going on. Keep that in mind. If you want to know more about Operation Gotham Shield or my perspective on it in relation to this, go listen to the Instagram Live I just did. It's on our most recent story on our feed. Or go look into Operation Gotham Shield yourself. But keep all that stuff in mind, because now, since we're over here in New York talking about this type of stuff, now you have New York making its own hand sanitizer produced by prison inmates. That's right. Slave labor is producing state-made hand sanitizer.
Make your own hand sanitizer? Can you do that? You should be governed. Open the curtain, please. We're introducing New York State Clean hand sanitizer made conveniently by the state of New York. This is a superior product to products now on the market. The World Health Organization, CDC, all those people suggest 60% alcohol content. Purell, competitor to New York State Clean, 70% alcohol. This is 75%.
What you're seeing is New York Governor Andrew Cuomo save face after leaking a plan for mass graves being dug by prison labor after activating the National Guard. What you're seeing right now is New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing Monday that the state will begin producing its own hand sanitizer. Following reports, it has now surpassed Washington State in having the most cases nationwide for the coronavirus. The state total for coronavirus cases has hit 142, a 35% increase over the course of one day, the governor said. That is just above Washington State's previous record of a high 141. Although New York has not recorded any COVID-19 related deaths as of Monday afternoon, Cuomo held a press conference outlining tactics that the state government is taking to curb the spread of the illness. The Democratic governor pulled open a curtain to unveil dozens of bottles of NYS Clean, New York State Clean hand sanitizer, which he said will be distributed to schools, prisons, and government agencies across the state this week. Yeah, again, I'm just calling it like it is. He's trying to save face because just last week there was a crazy article that came out about mass graves being dug by prison labor. And then another article came out again this week about mass graves being done by prison labor. And then again, just before coming on to the air with you guys, we put up an article right here from the Activist Post that talks about how the very same thing about how the New York City biological outbreak pandemic plans, including burying bodies in mass graves. Now, what I'm going to do instead is read you guys this quick article that talks about mass graves being dug by prison labor, because it's friggin' nuts. And it's exactly what it sounds like. They're expecting some kind of epidemic to come through and take care of people. This isn't some tabletop exercise, right? This isn't Event 201. This isn't Jade Helm 15. This isn't UX 16, Operation Gotham Shield. This isn't that. This is happening live time. So they're having to basically create these plans in response to what they're seeing. Whatever information the government is getting, they're not sharing it with us. They're just gradually kind of, trying to preempt it behind closed doors. Let me read you guys this article. It comes from Drudge Report feed. It says, New York prison labor prepares to dig graves. If New York City has a plague this year, there's a plan for its prisoners, not to protect them from infection in their tight quarters, but to use convicts to make New York State branded hand sanitizer. And if it comes to that, prisoners at Rikers to bury the dead. Governor Andrew Cuomo Monday, citing concerns about profiteers selling overpriced hand sanitizers, announced that Corecraft, a company that uses New York State prison labor, paid 16 cents and $1.14 an hour, would be making 100,000 gallons a week of New York branded hand sanitizers. That's how much those prisoners are being paid. 16 cents to $1.14 an hour to make 500 gallons a week of hand sanitizers. In the city, the pandemic influenza surge plan for managing in and out of hospital deaths that hospital deaths that the New York City Office of Chief Medical Examiner released in 2018 details worst-case plans for a mass infection and what would happen if the bodies started piling up. If the city's beefed-up cadaver storage and cremation facilities are overwhelmed, bodies will be ferried to Hart Island and desolate spit of land off the coast at the Bronx and Long Island Sound that function. Wow, this is crazy. Long Island Sound that functions as the city's public cemetery. Prisoners from nearby Rikers Island will be brought in to dig graves for the corpses of the stricken. It's a horribly written article, but you get the point. And there are other posts that we've talked about that explain this as well. They're really planning for this. I think that's the crazy part. And I find myself just kind of in awe. Really, trying to just casually talk about this, as we're seeing all this National Guard and all this military activity to take place. This is happening this week, right? Just last week again, and this comes from Mint Press News. It's by Alan McLeod. In case of a deadly coronavirus outbreak, New York plans to use prison labor to dig massive graves. It is crazy. This is whenever they were only at 42 cases. It's increasing, and it's going to grow exponentially. This is becoming insane, increasingly crazy. It will panic the people, and it will cause veritable forms of destabilization. And now you have New York deploying the National Guard to combat the coronavirus. And I remember posting on it and talking about it briefly about how modern soldiers are actually being equipped with antibacterial fabric and uniforms and stuff like that. But I'll read this and I'll play for you guys a quick clip. We put this up March 10th. It's from End Times Headlines by Ricky Scaparo. And here we are. We're casually talking about quarantining cities, quarantining areas, disappearing people, FEMA camps, martial law, all this stuff. Let me get into this article. It says New Jersey has reported its first COVID-19 related death. A 69-year-old man from Bergen County as New York unveils its most stringent measures yet to combat the surge in coronavirus in Westchester County. The New Jersey man hasn't been identified, but health officials said he has underlying conditions including emphysema, hypertension, and diabetes. He has no travel nexus to high-risk countries, but did work in New York. He initially survived one cardiac arrest, but went into cardiac arrest for a second time Tuesday, because that's how the virus works. It gets your lungs first, and if you get past it, the first time, it comes back a second time and comes after your heart. Very, very deadly. He's among the now 15 presumptive positive cases in the Garden State. Quote, "Our prayers are with the families during this difficult time," Governor Phil Murphy and Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver said in a joint statement. Quote, "We remain vigilant to doing all we can across all levels of government to protect the people of New Jersey." CDC Director testifies. It says CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield, MD, testified in front of the House of Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, and related agencies to discuss the response to both New Jersey and New York having declared a state of emergency. In New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo, announced the most rigorous actions to date to combat the spread in New Rochelle, which he described as the most significant cluster in the country and accounts for the lion's share of the surging caseload in the tri-state area. Those measures include deploying National Guard troops to a health department command post and setting up a satellite testing facility and a 1-mile, 2-week containment area in the city. Public schools in that containment zone will be closed through March 25th. National Guard troops will help clean surfaces and deliver food in that 1-mile area. As of Tuesday, Westchester County has seen 108 confirmed COVID-19 cases. That's 59% of all tri-state cases. So think about that. 1-mile, 2-week containment area. Public schools will be closed. National Guards are going to help clean surfaces and deliver food. Can they do that to all areas of the country? Is this what our military should be doing? What is going on? This is crazy. I want to play for you guys a quick video. New York governor calls in the National Guard and orders a containment zone for the coronavirus. I can't help but think of Tom Clancy's The Division. I can't help but think of Contagion, The Strain. I can't help think of just a bad sci-fi movie where if you give the military like control, shit's gonna hit the fan and they're not gonna relinquish control back to the civilians. It's gonna be like a completely different day and age. I can't help but think of anything, like nothing good is gonna come from this. I think that's what I'm trying to get around to say. It trips me out, the days that we are in. I just want to read a little bit of this, and then I'll play for you guys the video. This comes from Max Lavo over there at SHTF Plan. We put this up March 11th. It says the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, has not only called in the National Guard, but has ordered a containment zone set up for those infected with the coronavirus. While the mainstream media isn't using the term quarantine, it sure paints a similar picture. Cuomo said he is accepting a recommendation to shut down a 1-mile radius in New Rochelle because of the Rochester County because of the coronavirus outbreak. He has called on the National Guard to help in the effort to curb the outbreak. Oh, this is crazy. This is great. Here, let's just play the clip and we'll go from there.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on this Tuesday night. And we begin with the coronavirus emergency. Tonight, the first containment zone here in America, the New York governor imposing restrictions on a community just outside New York City, linked to the largest cluster of cases in the country, calling it a matter of life and death. The containment zone shutting down schools and major gathering places within a 1-mile radius in the New York suburb of New Rochelle. At the center of the zone, this synagogue, where dozens were exposed by a lawyer who remains in critical condition tonight. His wife now sharing her husband's struggle to find out that he was sick with the coronavirus. She says it took days for him to be tested after asking doctors at a hospital what was wrong with him. Tonight, across this country, there are at least 808 confirmed cases in 37 states and the District of Columbia, and 29 people have now died, 2 more just today. ABC's Whit Johnson leads us off tonight with the race to stop the spread, to save lives, and the battle over getting tests to everyone that should have them, with the National Guard now moving in that community. Whit leads us off.
Tonight, New York ordering the first containment zone in the U.S., with the number of infections in the state soaring to at least 173. The governor sending the National Guard to New Rochelle, a suburban hotspot north of Manhattan.
It is a dramatic action. This is literally a matter of life and death.
That zone of containment consisting of a 1-mile radius around the Young Israel Synagogue, where dozens of people were exposed by that infected attorney. Schools and buildings that hold large gatherings will shut down for 2 weeks. Most businesses and grocery stores will remain open. People will be allowed to enter and leave.
You're not containing people, it's facilities.
The wife of Lawrence Garbus, that attorney who was the first in the area to get the virus, releasing a statement saying, as many have asked, of course he went to the doctor and did so many times. No one figured it out, and it even took the hospital days to figure it out. This was all new, adding, please pray for those who are positive, who have had high fevers and suffered from this. Among the new cases statewide, 2 school bus drivers testing positive. Officials say they're now notifying parents.
They transport between them approximately 80 students on several routes.
A Barclays employee who worked on their trading floor contracting the virus. Today, neighboring New Jersey reporting its first death, a 69-year-old man with underlying medical conditions. That state is also where 32-year-old physician's assistant James Kai is hospitalized. Kai describing himself as previously healthy, but the virus is taking a heavy toll.
Half of my lung is already pneumonia, not working. Only half. So I don't know how much longer I have to keep my lung working.
The spread leading dozens of schools and colleges to suspend in-person classes, including Amherst, San Francisco State, and Ohio State University. Today, Harvard announcing it will begin transitioning to online instruction. Just outside Dallas, a father, his wife, and 3-year-old have tested positive.
The 3-year-old gives us a little more concern than the father who's healthy in his late 30s, but we're praying for a quick recovery there too.
A man in his 30s in Anoka County, Minnesota, reportedly sought medical care on March 3rd. He was evaluated and released tonight in critical condition after being diagnosed with the virus.
Jesus. Good Lord. And so I hope you guys are gradually beginning to see that while this may be a hoax, while this may be a false flag, and we talk about it here on the show all the time, there are real people that die in false flags. Even though these guys are trying to exact an agenda, it's still our lives that are being played with. I don't think people really get that. And I think when we marginalize it, when we say, oh, this is just a hoax, this is just, this is just to push the vaccine agenda. Yes, we get that. But I really don't think people inherently understand the threat. And so whenever we're not having like conscious conversation about proactive ways to counter this message, right? When we're not trying to tell people to prepare in their own personal lives, they're only going to look to the government as a solution. If we don't start coming up with conscious protocols, again, conscious solutions, proactive precautions, and all kinds of different things, they're going to run to the default person that has provided them the answer. So yes, people have every reason to be worried, but at the same time, how do we preempt this chaos? I think a real question that a lot of people are beginning to ask themselves, and they should, is quarantine or constitution? Is it constitutionally right to quarantine America? Is that American? We're at this point, and I said this this weekend and earlier this week. It's the same thing with the immigration invasion and the mass migration. The same way that you see these people calling for the border and calling for the wall to stop all this stuff. I've not done that. I've just said I'd ask for a pathway to citizenship. The same way that you see people calling for the wall and calling for the border, they're going to call for more of these draconian measures. They're going to call for the mass quarantines. They're going to call for mass vaccinations. They're going to call for deporting people. They're going to call for border patrol running through the streets, seeing who's legal and not. That's why this is such a precarious topic. That's why this is extremely controversial. And people running around saying it's a hoax, downplaying it. You're not looking at the dimensions. I understand that. You're worried. You're scared. You've got the key. It's all about mandated vaccine. I hear you. We get that. We understand that. But what else is there? This is not just a simple 1, 2, 3. Again, it's not just the virus that we should be worried about. There's more to this virus than just the disease itself. But here's what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be getting into following the money. What's going on with this virus? We're aware that Bill Gates is involved. We're aware that now $8 billion has been injected into this conversation. People are beginning to politicize the events. We're gonna talk about that. I know people want us to get into the 5G connection because they've seen some memes pop around and they want our analysis on it. We've got to see more evidence of that pop up. When we come back, we're going to be talking about following the money. Is Bill Gates funding this home testing kits? Is that part of a larger plan? Are there other environmental factors involved here? Why are the feds quarantining money? We're going to be getting into this and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction on Factions of Freedom, and we'll be right back right after this. Salutations, my friends. Have you heard of Shilajit? Well, to be quite honest, neither had I. But then I started doing some research and I found out that it was part of the Hindu Ayurvedic system of medicine, and for hundreds of years since its discovery, it's had the potential to help people live a healthy and balanced life. Here, let me read off some of the benefits for you guys. It increases your energy, boosts your libido, balances your mood, supports healthy aging, decalcifies your pineal gland, and we all understand how important that is, supports healthy brain health. It also helps regulate your hormones. There are so many benefits to taking this that I cannot put them in this single video. You can mix it in with tea. I like to mix it in with my pre-workout in the morning, and be careful, it's going to give you that boost. It's going to give you that energetic boost you need to get through your day. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction, out. Final segment. I feel like I should let you guys know that I wanted to take like 2 breaks. Like I wanted to take a break. I wanted to finish because these episodes are getting so long and we only take 2 breaks. I understand that people don't have like an attention span for that time period. I get that. And so I wanted to take a separate break in that middle segment, but I wasn't sure kind of how to do it. So, and I didn't want to make it like a trend thing either. I wanted to, with Ameriquarantine, I wanted to look at the foreign responses in the first half, and then in the second half, look at the domestic issues that the domestic response. And if episodes like this end up becoming this lengthy and this information packed in the future, we may be taking additional breaks, because I don't want to just be chattering your ears off. I don't want you guys to get lost in conversation. I don't want you guys to say, oh my God, the frick's happening. I want you to really pay attention. So if we have these long episodes, this is me kind of letting you guys know that in the future, if we have these comprehensive transmissions, I'm going to throw another break in to give your mind a break, dude. Like, I get how it goes. To give your mind a break, put on some music, just really digest what it is you're hearing. I get this stuff is heady. I try to make it as cohesive and cogent as possible. I really try to be your friend because I understand how dire things are. But in this segment, as we follow the money, I just have like a few questions, man. As always, like, why are we offering people $4,500 or $4,500 to be human guinea pigs? Why is Bill Gates running around offering people test kits? Why are we hearing about mutations and things taking place? Why are we hearing about economic impacts in relation to a virus? Like, there's so many different things with this that I just have to ask these questions. I just have to. I would not be doing my due diligence by not asking these questions. There's a lot of strange things that come with this, and I myself am trying to wrap my mind around it. But I think a good way for us to kind of get into this segment and topic and angle of the coronavirus is to break down how this would actually fit an agenda still in the vein of not treating this as a hoax, but looking at it in a deeper sense. Right here, World Health Organization urges people to go cashless because dirty banknotes can spread the virus. Dirty banknotes. This comes from Activist Post. They put this up March 4th. It says, following reports that Beijing had, quote, quarantined dirty cash, the World Health Organization warned on Monday that the virus could survive on banknotes, potentially spreading COVID-19 within communities and across the world. To reduce the risk of being infected by the money, the NGO advised citizens in countries struggling with the outbreak to favor digital payments when possible. The Daily Telegraph noted that the World Health Organization is telling the public to avoid cash is hardly a surprise. Research has found that COVID-19 has been found to live on surfaces for as long as 9 days. During the statement, a World Health Organization spokesman referenced a Bank of England study claiming that banknotes, quote, can carry bacteria or viruses, and urged people to wash their hands. Other studies have shown that 90% of the U.S. $1 bills had bacteria present, and one Swiss study found that viruses had survived on the face of Swiss francs for days. Yeah, the one thing that you're for sure going to find on American money is cocaine. So they want to try to stop transfers of notes happening because for sure you don't want to contract it this way. And what's crazy too is Tom Clancy's The Division actually opens up like that a shadowy organization was working in the background trying to supplant this viral epidemic that shuts down the entire world, and it actually opens up by them putting a little dropper from some unknown vial with some unknown chemical on a $20 bill. And then that $20 bill being introduced into the circulation and then entering into banks and then exchanging different hands. And then as viral outbreaks begin to consume the world, varying members of Tom Clancy's division from the JTF, the Joint Task Force, they become activated because they've been given vaccines that make them, resistant to this type of deal. But I digress. What I'm trying to say is the actual virus in Tom Clancy's The Division starts through the spread of money. So when I'm saying follow the money, it's not that far off. You see. Again, another angle to look at is this right here. Federal Reserve to quarantine dollars from Asia on COVID-19 transmission concerns. So again, keep that in mind. People knew that this could be a delivery method. Why would they quarantine cash from Asia? What notes are coming from Asia? You see, like, do you get what I'm saying? There's so many different vector points with this because it could live on that surface for 9 days. Some people aren't even showing symptoms. They can show symptoms as early as 5 days. The numbers that we're getting out of China, we can't trust. Some people are saying that you're asymptomatic for at least 14 days. That's why the quarantine takes place for 28 days. But again, the cash being a vector point of it, nobody would know. All the more reason as to how this serves the agenda for the technocracy and for the cashless society. I'm going to read a little bit of this and I'll get into my main argument in this segment. This is from Zero Hedge. They put this up March 6th. It says, following reports that Beijing had quarantined dirty cash, the Federal Reserve is now doing the same out of the fear that dollars in circulation from Asia could contain COVID-19, reports Reuters. A Fed spokesperson told Reuters on Friday that quarantining physical dollars that it repatriates from Asia before recirculating them in the U.S. financial system has begun. The new precautionary method is to limit the transmission of the virus in the U.S. The spokesperson said that the federal regional bank system with 12 total branches across the country will help manage money supply coming from Asia and quarantine dollars for upwards of 10 days before recirculation. There were no specifics on how the dollars would be sanitized. Bear in mind that even before the COVID-19 outbreaks, a 2014 study by the researchers at New York University identified 3,000 types of bacteria on dollar bills due to how widely and frequently they changed hands. Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Like you will find traces of cocaine on American dollars. The World Health Organization warned Monday that the virus could survive on banknotes, potentially spreading the virus within communities and across the world. I just have to laugh. Not about the virus, but about cocaine being on dollars. It's like, there is no clean dollar. If it's not been at a strip club, it's been, shoved places that it shouldn't. So, and I know this is serious. Like, this is legitimately serious, but you get the point. There is something going on with our money and it benefits someone else. But if you guys need me to quarantine your dollars, I can definitely do so. If you want me to hold on to those and make sure that they're sanitized, I can definitely take care of that for you. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I will for sure get that done for you. But back to the news. Back to what's really going on. Earlier this week, speaking of transmissions and things like this, Washington State is debating going underneath a state of emergency. Oregon's underneath a state of emergency, or at least a public health crisis, right? Earlier this week, since we're talking about Seattle and Washington, that whole area, earlier this week, Bill Gates sent out test kits, or is beginning to send out test kits to people within the Seattle area. I can't help but think that there's got to be some kind of nefarious aspect to this. Why would the man who's given money to this virus, who's helped create this virus, who's helped engineer the spread of this virus, why in God's name would this man send out these home test kits? You know, that's how it works. That's how you get extra funding. You got to look like you're compassionate. You have to seem like you're a philanthropist, like you care about people, like you're doing this out of the kindness of your hearts. Why would Bill Gates send out these home test kits? Is it like DNA and Me or Ancestry.com, 23andMe? Is it like these types of things to where he creates his own archive for people's medical information? Like, my God, if Facebook said, hey, we're going to send out, if Facebook had like a little app on their phone, and it's like, hey, tap this if you have coronavirus, we'll send you a test kit, people would freak the frig out. So why are we not freaking out about Bill Gates doing the very same thing? Let me get in this article. We put this up March 9th, some sign of the times. It says, is Bill Gates' funded program to offer home testing kits for coronavirus part of a larger plan? And I'm just going to play this video clip from Watch News as I read this article. It says, testing for the novel coronavirus in the Seattle area will get a huge boost in the coming weeks as a project funded by Bill Gates and his foundation begins offering home testing kits that will allow people who fear that they may be infected to swab their noses and send the samples back for analysis. Results, which should be available in 1 or 2 days, will be shared with local health officials who will notify those who test positive. Via online forums, infected people can answer questions about their movements and contacts, making it easier for health officials to locate others who may need to be tested or quarantined, as well as to track the virus's spread and identify possible hotspots. The goal is to eventually be able to help process thousands of tests a day, said Scott Dowell, a leader of the coronavirus response at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The project is ramping up as quickly as possible, but it is not clear exactly when it will launch, he added. Among other things, software needs to be upgraded to handle the expected rush of requests, and a detailed questionnaire finalized for people who require tests. Quote, although there's a lot to be worked out, this has enormous potential to turn the tide of the epidemic, Dowell said. While public health, Seattle and King County, has confirmed 71 cases and 15 deaths as of Saturday, modeling by Trevor Bedford, a computational biologist at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, estimated on Wednesday that the actual number of cases in the Seattle area was about 600. Unchecked, that could theoretically increase to 12,000 cases and possibly as many as 30,000 by the end of March. According to projections from Mike Familiar at the Institute for Disease Modeling in Bellevue, but steps to slow the transmission can significantly reduce the number of new infections, underscoring the importance of acting quickly to protect people from the virus. The new effort aims to leverage the formidable resources and expertise of the Gates Foundation, known for fighting disease and epidemics around the globe, to assist local health agencies struggling to keep up with the fast-moving virus. The Seattle area has emerged as the epicenter of the new disease, with far more cases and deaths than any other U.S. city. Quote, one of the most important things from our perspective, having watched and worked with others in parts of the world, is the identification of people who are positive for the virus so they can be safely isolated and cared for, and the identification of their contacts who can then be quarantined, Dow said. But testing has been limited until now, leaving many people frustrated and frightened. Last week, a laboratory at UW-Medicine got approval to begin processing specimens collected by physicians and other healthcare providers. The Gates-funded project will reduce the need for sick people to visit a doctor's office or a clinic, lowering the chances of exposing others. Which is where I have to start right there. That's my main issue. How are people, again, because of how this thing transfers, it is airborne. What happens if you go into one of these hospitals? The same way with the Diamond Princess cruise ships and all these other cruises, you can't quarantine a cruise ship because the air is circulating on the actual ship itself. Therefore, the people who are on those cruises are being exposed to the coronavirus, and they themselves could contract it. So is the same thing happening in hospitals? Is there a specific separate wing that is dealing with these types of infectious patients? That's why we're saying that this is more lethal than the flu. Because if it gets you the first time, you can get over it. The second time, it's coming for your heart. So how is this part of a larger agenda? Well, accompanied with this post, I have this next article that comes from World Truth TV. Gates Foundation leading the way in eugenics depopulation plan to rid the world of humans. Bill Gates says that to depopulate an overcrowded world, 350 people must be killed each day via vaccines. And in the very same post, another slide that I have attached to it is how Bill Gates funded the Pirbright Institute, which owns a patent on coronavirus, and the CDC owns the strain isolated from humans. So already we're talking about the mutations that are occurring. Could it be that Bill Gates is using this outbreak, this crisis, this epidemic to begin to get people's DNA, see how certain populations are affected by different strains of the coronavirus? Because we're already in like the second or the third or the fourth mutation of this. That's how crazy this thing is. It attacks specific populations a little bit more deadly than others. We're aware that it has detrimental and adverse effects to people with Asian heritage in their blood. So then you got to ask the question, why is Iran being afflicted so much? Why is Italy having an outbreak in cases? Because of how it mutates, the gain of function capability that it has, that it can transform, that there are other strains to it. Do you see? That's why this is a beast. That's why this isn't like the flu. That's why people are still trying to wrap their heads around it. So how is Bill Gates involved? Because he has rights to the strain. Because problem, reaction, solution. Event 201. It was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that was there back in October of last year, helping take part in the development of this. You see, you have to understand that the corrupt vaccine industry has the motive to stage a massive false flag outbreak to demand nationwide vaccine mandates. That's their plan. That's their goal. You see, they cannot move forward with their agenda without doing so, without debilitating us. Think about it. There are protests all over the countries that are all over the world that are being afflicted by this. This serves so many agendas. It has so many hallmark figures and finger points on it. It is disgusting. I've got to ask the question, is this the chemtrail flu? You know, there, just real quick, this isn't really following the money. I just kind of want to talk about it, just something to think about. There were x-rays that came out from victims that suffered from the COVID-19 virus, right? It attacks their upper respiratory tract. It attacks their lungs. I can't help but think, you know, is this the chemtrail flu? Is that the 5G connection? Is Bill Gates over here monitoring us, seeing what happens to people who are afflicted by the chemtrail virus, by the chemtrail flu, by 5G sickness and things like this right here? Just look at some of these x-rays. There's spots all over people's lungs. One of the descriptions I read there, it says it's like breathing through sandpaper. Terrifying damage in the lungs of COVID-19 victims. You know, it's crazy. And it's attacking people. So I've got to ask the question again, is this just the chemtrail flu? If it's coming out of China, you know, we know they have horrible working conditions there, horrible environmental standards. People chain smoke like chimneys. You know, is it just that? Who really knows? Because at the end of the day, it's a combination of things. It truly is a monster. We are looking at something that is never before seen. This is man-made for a reason, and it's devastating things. We're just in the beginning phases of this, too. Like, this is just now starting. That's the craziest part. This is just now starting, right? I want to play for you guys real quick an update, basically from Tedros Ghebreyesus, the World Health Organization's Secretary General, and how he's talked about, again, really trying to raise the alarm bell on the coronavirus and how it actually is like a global pandemic. Earlier this week, he made an announcement talking about just the lethality of this virus, how some cases have increased like 13% or times 13. It's crazy. I'm going to let him explain himself, and then I'll read this article from Common Dreams. Like I said, this is from World Health Organization's Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus. We put this up March 11th. Let's take a listen.
There are now more than 118,000 cases in 114 countries, and 4,291 people have lost their lives. Thousands more are fighting for their lives in hospitals. In the days and weeks ahead, we expect to see the number of cases, the number of deaths, and the number of affected countries climb even higher. WHO has been assessing this outbreak around the clock, and we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore there are now more than 118,000.
Yeah. I'd say that's a good way to put it. The alarming levels of inaction. And so I kind of want to start closing this segment out. Since we're following the money, I want to put it into perspective for people. Just following the money. I said this earlier this week. Who stands to gain from this crazy epidemic? The telecom industries. That's why you see the NBA saying, look, we're going to shut down all games for the rest of the seasons, but we'll stream them. We may stream them. Events are being shut down, but we may stream them. You may not be able to go, but we'll stream it. The telecom industries will stand to gain and benefit and be put in even more of a position of power because of this. They have to maintain communications. Facebook has to stay up. Twitter has to stay up. YouTube has to stay up. Wikipedia has to stay up. Google has to stay up. All these places have to stay up in order to maintain information. But again, all non-essential travel, things like basketball games, soccer games, football games, hockey games, stuff like that, that's done. That's old world order stuff. You've really got to start thinking about the socioeconomic and the socio-political reformation, the paradigm shift. I mean, good Lord, think about it. You had Greta Thunberg saying you haven't seen anything yet, trying to shut down all the air travel and all the other traffic that's going on with this. If you don't think the environmentalists are watching the world's response and trying to figure out how to trigger it for their own ends and future mutations, future agendas, future crises, you don't know what you're playing with. That's why I'm telling you, it's like 12 monkeys when you're going to get environmentalists using diseases to try to like cripple humanity. It's nuts, but I digress. I'm ranting. I want to read you guys. I just want to fire off a few events that have been killed because of the coronavirus. I've told you already that they've closed South by Southwest, Ultrafest, South by Southwest, Ultrafest, Coachella, other events, over 440 trade shows, events. You've got to think about what that's going to do not only to the local economy, to that state's economy, and then to the nation's economy. Flights, like airplane lines, are running ghost flights because they can't not fly. You've got to think about like the bubble that we're already on and how that's a very shady place to be on, and how something that even hiccups us for 30 days, 2 months, 3 months, how it's going to be very hard to bounce back from that. So here, let me read you guys just this little compilation of current events that have been canceled. Sports matches are the most common type of events being canceled and or postponed across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Second are the concerts and festivals. One of the most high-profile events postponed this week has been the Coachella Valley Music Festival and Arts in Indio, California. Organizers moved the April 10th to April 12th dates to October 9th and 16th in hopes that the virus crisis developing in the U.S. would subside in the next 6 months. Organizers are pulling the plug on conferences, auto shows, film production, and even political events. Yeah, the Council on Foreign Affairs did not meet. They were supposed to meet about how to do business underneath a coronavirus outbreak, but could not meet because one of the members got the coronavirus outbreak. That, to me, sends the symbol of there will be no business being done during this time period. I'll say that again. For 2 months, business isn't being done. A month, business isn't being done. People really should, again, follow the money. Yeah, for sure, pay attention to the crisis, but what's going to happen if the entire world goes into a shutdown? Let me read you again some of these concerts. You know, because we pay attention to that, right? I got time to go to concerts. Mariah Carey, DJ Khaled, Stormzy, Green Day, Avril Lavigne, Madonna, Pearl Jam, Miley Cyrus, and Zach Brown. Conferences that are going to be over with. South by Southwest, Tucson Festival of Books. Google canceled its I.O. developer event. The New York International Auto Show, the Mobile World Congress, Game Developers Conference, Google News Initiative Global Summit, the Associate of Southeast Asian Nations, Shopify canceled its annual developer conference for virus issues, Seattle's Emerald City Comic-Con, TED 2020 in Vancouver, the World Anti-Doping Agency Symposium. As I said before, Coachella got canceled, Ultrafest got canceled, Tomorrowland got canceled, St. Patrick's Day. The New York City Half Marathon, the Olympics qualifying out there in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, Hong Kong Rugby Sevens, Singapore Rugby Sevens, Barcelona Marathon, Seoul Marathon, Rome, Paris, Milan, Wuhan, Arsenal versus Manchester, all kinds of stuff. Political events. Senator Bernie Sanders and former Vice President have both canceled political rallies for fears on March 10th. Launches and premiere. Disney Plus European launch, canceled. Peter Rabbit the 2, canceled. No Time to Die, canceled. Sonic the Hedgehog's Chinese premiere, delayed. And you get it. The Amazing Race, Jeopardy, The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, Mission Impossible 7, and so much more. This will mess up the economy. And if we don't start thinking, I'm not the one. If we don't start thinking past this virus, we're never going to get past this virus. If we don't start thinking about what this means for us and what's coming down the line, we're going to get caught up in the chaos. I hope you guys understand that there's more to this virus than the actual disease. What we're being confronted with is a chimera, and we're still trying to figure out how to digest it. And so I know people wanted me to talk about the connection between 5G, coronavirus, and so much more. I think I'll have to dedicate a separate transmission to that because I get it. Releasing a bioweapon that alter people's DNA to where they're more susceptible to frequency manipulation, that's for sure very real. But right now we need to deal with That's right. And before I let you good people go, I just want to summarize it as this. This has been the first time with the Stafford Act that they've enacted quarantine in over 50 years. All these travel restrictions, America being put down in lockdown. I understand people say it's a hoax. They understand this to a degree. I hear you. I think we should understand that this is the first of many bioweapons and that we're being put into a war footing, some kind of fighting stance, if you ask me. And all that can really make me think at the end of the day is give me liberty or give me death. As the world is becoming increasingly crazy, and as I lose my mind, all I can think to do is just keep in the work. Who knows where it will take us? But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I really have for you guys and gals. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have it in the description bar below. And as always, guys and gals, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction, out.
I'm just losing my mind, that's all.
I think that coronavirus, climate change, I don't know, we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Losing my mind. 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 Losing my mind, that's all.